Hey everyone, happy Sunday. Nice to see you all here. And let's get started. From the spooky land near Salem, Mass, to you listening around the world, this, my ghouls and guys, is Spaced Out Sunday. I'm your host and Spaced Out Radio's resident witch, Lynn Wallington, coming to you live from my broomstick. So grab a seat, keep your arms and legs on the broom at all times. In case of emergency, there are no oxygen masks or flotation devices, so just hang on tight as we fly into tonight's adventure. We welcome you to tonight's show on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you want to take a listen to the archives, they are free at youtube.com/spacedoutradio. Just do us the favor and hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and my personal handle at Witchy Linny, Witchy with a Y, Linny with an I-E, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show and at Witchy Linny. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading up on the SOR Newswire, and so much more. And if you're in the mood for some paranormal stories combined with utter ridiculousness, you can find me and my friend Caitlin on YouTube at Paranormal Spirits. I put the link in the description down below. It's Sunday night, and I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up the weekend than with the one and only Science Bob. Now, most of you already know Science Bob, and he needs no introduction. But since we're getting some new audience members all of the time, I thought it would be nice to share a little bit about him. So here we go. Science Bob McGwier has specialized his work in the field of artificial intelligence and has been leading the way using computer technology to help detect UFOs and UAPs in the skies over the United States. He received his BSEE Electrical Engineering and BS Applied Math from Auburn University and his PhD in Applied Mathematics from Brown University. Dr. McGwier also worked at Sandia National Labs in Albuquerque starting in 1977 and was faculty Auburn University 1984 to 1986, Institute for Defense Analyses Center for Communications Research from 1986 to 2011, and most recently, Science Bob retired as a faculty member of Virginia Tech, where he worked since 2011 as professor and chief scientist of the Ted and Karyn Hume Center for National Security and Technology. So, put on your lab coats, be careful with those Bunsen burners, and help me welcome Science Bob to the show tonight.
Welcome, to be
Science
here.
Bob.
Love to be here with Lynn.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so happy that you're here.
It'll be so fun. Yeah, you've been doing so great since you joined the SOR family. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. Oh, I'm so excited. I have you all to myself tonight. I'm like thrilled. Science. There we go. Science Bob for president. Yes.
Let me tell you, that is the one job you'd have to kill me, and then I wouldn't be able to do it before I would even say yes.
I know.
I wouldn't be president for any reason. It is I realize people are ambitious, but it is not worth the hassle.
Oh. No, I would never want to do it.
No. I'm glad there are others that want to do it, just not me.
Right. Yeah. It's got to be the one job where, like everybody is going to criticize you at one point or another. They're never going to be 100% happy with you, and they're going to pull all your skeletons out of the closet. No thanks.
And you have to be president for everyone in America, or you're not doing your job.
Well, that is true.
And it's really hard lately with all the divisiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's just craziness right now.
Yep.
So, speaking of the government, though, so since we all know that we had the UAP report on June 25th come out, and the government didn't really give us a whole heck of a lot, though I still say they did give us a little bit. Yes, I was amazed because I was poo-pooing it the whole time before it came out. I was like, nah, it's not gonna be anything. And I was reading it like, oh my God, I can't believe they just said that. So that was.
Well, I have a contrarian view.
Yeah.
Okay, so my contrarian view has nothing to do with that document.
Oh.
What the contrarian view is based on is the Deputy Secretary of Defense ordered the entire Defense Department to drop the shields and take whatever shots they needed to help the committees understand what's going on, including granting security clearances to the people that need to gather the data. That's number one. And number two, Avril Haines, who is the director of national intelligence, promised the House and Senate Armed Services and Intelligence Committees a much better update after 90 days.
Good.
So the original thing was, hey, we've been screwed by the Pentagon trying to keep us from being able to do anything.
Yeah.
And all of government through Avril Haines and the DepSec Defense says, oh, no, this is not the end of it. And then you've got senators and congressmen sitting on these powerful committees demanding hearings. Now, if they get these hearings, which Elizondo and Christopher Mellon are actually after, what is different about a hearing other than these documents? The people that come before the committees stick up their hands and they take an oath to tell the truth. And this is why people avoid these committee hearings, because they are under oath.
Now, if they have, like an NDA, or they're not allowed to talk about it on a regular basis,
they go into closed session because all of these committees are cleared. They can have classified sessions, but they cannot lie without being accused of perjury.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, fingers crossed. That would be
me
great.
too. I mean, look, this is what Elizondo and Mellon were after. They want hearings so that they can be grilled by Congress critters while the people sitting in front of them are under oath.
Well, that would be
good. You cannot predict what these Congress critters are going to ask. I mean, can you imagine the question? Okay, tell us everything you know, and don't you dare even think about lying about Roswell.
Oh, please, yes. Yeah, and if Elizondo is on trial and has to testify, or wouldn't be on trial himself, but you know what I mean, had to testify, I could finally say that I think he's told us something. I would get off his case. I would.
So what I do believe is that in closed session, since the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Select Committee for Intelligence are fully cleared for everything, including SAPCO, Elizondo could not refuse to answer their questions if they are pertinent to the questions asked. So he wouldn't be able to call out his NDAs. He'd have to answer the questions.
Good. That would be great. But would they know the right questions to ask, though? That's what I'm curious about.
You think Elizondo and Mellon haven't been
feeding them questions?
Oh, come on. This is how it works. So they have an agenda, and their agenda is have these hearings. And if they have these hearings, they're going to prep the questioners. That and Elizondo. Elizondo was way high up in the Pentagon management of the Special Access Program Committee. He was right there at the top. Yeah. He was higher. The people don't understand. He was higher in the food chain than Chris Mellon. I mean,
I don't think
so. The thing that other people don't know, is the following is a deal. He and a well-known mad dog, former Secretary of Defense, were in combat together, and Elizondo saved his life. Okay, I mean, look, this guy, he is the real deal.
Yeah.
He is a hero to those who are in the know.
Right.
I mean,
well,
this is long before he ever got involved in UAP. He was a hero.
Right. Well, like I said, I've never doubted his military service. I would never try and take that away from him. But I just don't, like he hasn't brought much to the table lately.
Well, except he's under these. Look, they have threatened his livelihood.
Yeah.
And the disastrous decision to join this blabbermouth boob in Southern California has caused him to have to retreat to live like a monk or in Wyoming because it's where he can afford to live. No, he has been treated badly. And I really hope that he does something for himself and his family that relieves his situation, because he is a hero.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to come out and try to bring something to the public's attention that the government doesn't want brought to their attention, of course that's going to happen. I think that's to be expected. So I'm hoping he went in kind of knowing he was going to be,
Well, I actually think since he left while James Mattis was still the SecDef, that he thought he would have cover. And then Mattis retired, and what happened was, I believe he became under increasing pressure, and he stated openly in other forums than this that he has been threatened. And what he's done now is bring in the 900-pound gorilla with a massive sledgehammer, and that's Danny Sheehan. The Pentagon will never forget UFOs.
Yeah.
The Pentagon will never get over Danny Sheehan defending those who were publishing the Pentagon papers during the Vietnam War. People don't understand how long Danny Sheehan has been playing right up there at the top. He was in the Carter administration as an advisor to President Carter. I mean, he knows him and can talk to him. Right. Sheehan's been around forever. That's number one. And number two, this guy had his first major lawyer job working for F. Lee Bailey. I mean, he's been a superstar since the day he was in law school.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he has. He's a rock star, man. Like, I think the moment he came to the table, they knew that, like, this was serious. We've got to, like, get our act together and really figure out what we're going to do to handle this before it gets, I think it can get so much more blown out of, or blown out into the public than they realized now. And the moment I think they were just quaking in their boots when they saw Danny Sheehan was involved.
Well, that's number one. And number two, they have poked the bear. What is the bear? Every investigative journalist that covers Washington of any import is now looking for alien bodies, crash recoveries, the real deep dark secrets, and who has the UFOs. And I don't believe they will keep it hidden.
Well, I hope not. That would be amazing if they didn't. So, Jeff, I wanted to see what you thought of this. I'm going to be blunt and to the point. The U.S. coming out about UFOs is the worst thing for the UFO community. No more throwing out there that we are being visited. And now the American public is like, okay.
So I don't quite agree with Jeff. Yeah. I believe that what has happened, look, irrespective of my disrespect for Tom DeLonge, the upshot is the people he brought into TTSA are the same people that sat down with Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal and Helene Cooper and revealed to them these videos and told them the story. Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon met with him. Hey, buddy, I'm okay. I'm a good guy. Okay, they are responsible for all of this. Irrespective of what other failures ufology believes they have had, it is not because they did not do a good thing in 2017. That's number one. Yeah. And number two, if they made a mistake, it was tying themselves to a blabbermouth name dropper. And the blabbermouth name dropper wrote an email to John Podesta. What happened to that email Remember what happened in 2016? Podesta's emails were grabbed by WikiLeaks and put out everywhere.
Yeah.
And so the William Neal McCaslin was revealed to the world. Yeah. And that was a bad thing for Tom DeLonge and TTSA.
Tom DeLonge, and it just, his involvement in all of this has always confused me, because even if you just sit back and look at it from just from the outside, okay, yes, he was in he was in a popular band, but how is this guy who's a musician going and meeting with high level politicians? That never made sense to me. I never understood how he got that in.
Well, so he went in and talked to people who have worked at a very high level. And if you believe Senator Harry Reid, the people he talked to are in possession of the core secrets.
But how did he even get appointments to talk to them?
Okay, so he went to a party and talked his way in. And I think so it's kind of been clear for several decades that there has been this faction that wants all this secrecy ended. And now it's become even more important. So let me explain to you how the U.S. government and some classified stuff works.
Okay.
So we all are told, we don't know because we're not read in, that UFOs and the crash retrievals and the aliens and so forth, should that be real, are covered under special access programs. That's number one. Number two, it's unacknowledged special access programs. That means if I'm in it, I'm not allowed to tell you anything about it under penalty of going to jail for the rest of my life. And number three, it's a waived, unacknowledged special access program, which was set up under a Casper Weinberger when he was SecDef. And what it means is that's not covered by oversight by the Congress. They are literally power unto themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's suppose all of that's true. I'm not saying it's true, but let's suppose it's true.
Yeah.
The people that talked to Tom DeLonge decided that they just couldn't get anywhere with these waived, unacknowledged special access programs, and both the American people and the world needed to understand what all this was about. Okay, for whatever reason, we need energy that doesn't burn coal or something like that. We need propulsion that allows us to do interesting things in case we need to escape the Earth for a time or whatever.
Right.
All right. So they have this. They began trying to get this story out from under decades ago, and we know this because in the 70s and in the 80s and in the 90s, there were these aborted attempts to release stuff in videos that were sponsored by President Nixon and so forth. And these were aborted because they didn't actually let everything out. Okay.
Yeah.
So why? Well, I can tell you, if you want to do really serious scientific research on something that's completely unknown, like let's suppose we want to verify the standard model for particles in the universe, what does it cost? It's cost hundreds of billions of dollars and tens of thousands of scientists working to build and use the Large Hadron Collider. And that's science we already knew ought to be true.
Yeah.
What we're observing with these vehicles is stuff that we don't have a clue how they work. They are violating both special relativity and quantum field theory. They're violating the principles of physics as we understand them. Right. So what is clear to the people in charge, that having things under a waived, unacknowledged special access program is tens of times more expensive than having it out in the open.
Yeah.
And I believe that the move from waived, unacknowledged special access to something more reasonable allows other people to be read in. And from large communities of scientists that have security clearances that can work on, and that's not enough, broaden the people that can look at it. And so the thing that is happening all across the government is having things classified is realized as being way too expensive. So for example, when I was at Virginia Tech working for the Ted and Karyn Hume Center for National Security and Technology, the thing we worked at extremely hard for Ted Hume was to convince the government to let us expose students and other faculty to parts of the problems that they needed that were clearly unclassified, so they could take the results of the engineering and science work done and apply it to the classified parts of the problem without restricting it to so that nobody can look at it. Yeah. And the Hume Center is now the largest funded research center at Virginia Tech. We succeeded completely. And it's the model for others to emulate. And that was what Ted Hume was for. And just so you're aware, because I'm wide open. Ted Hume was Office of Science and Technology at CIA until he retired, started a company, sold his company to Kinetic, and monetized and gave money to start this center at Virginia Tech. And Ted Hume is a well-known, very senior person who didn't do clandestine operations, but he was science and technology at CIA. And my partners and I agreed to go to work at Hume. And what we were doing was exposing students to the kinds of technical work they would do if they went and worked for the Department of Defense or the intelligence community. So we didn't try to co-opt them. We didn't force them. But what we did was expose them and show them some of the stuff that we were allowed to show. And it was clear from the beginning they were captured by the coolness of the work. And so that's the reason the center succeeded. That, and we did incredible things. We started a company, Hawkeye, but my partners and I started a company, Hawkeye 360, and another company called Federated Wireless. And people can go and Google what they are and what they are about. And you can see we are at the bleeding edge of a bunch of technology. And a bunch of these students and other people we could talk into went to work for these companies and have made them successful. So it was an experiment that Ted funded, and it has worked. And I'm happy about it because I didn't want to fail, Ted. Right.
That's amazing. Well, I have no doubt anything you're involved in, Science Bob, is going to do well.
No. So that's wrong. I have had lots of success. I have had lots of success. There's no doubt about it. And people can go Google the successes I've had. I was there at the beginning of software-defined radio. And what that may mean nothing to almost everyone in your audience, but everybody that has one of these has a software-defined radio in it, and you can get the idea. Okay, so all right, so but along with the successes, I promise you, there were 5 to 10 failures for every one of those.
Oh, I believe that for sure.
And what you're everyone that does anything fails, and what you have to do is learn from your failures and pick up and move on.
Who was it? There was somebody that quoted. It was something like, I can't even remember what it was they made. But I just remember the quote. Basically, he said, we didn't have 75 or whatever it was failures. We had 75 ways of not doing what we wanted to do, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And
learning from it.
Yes. But that's what science is all about too.
Okay, so I'm really chomping at the bit to answer Mozart's question.
Yes, please. Yes, I was going to ask him.
Yeah, so if the people who was giving DeLonge all the information haven't been imprisoned by breaking their NDAs, can we assume they are lying or they are above the law? I promise you this. whoever gave DeLonge the information was authorized to do so by somebody way above them.
Yeah.
My guess, it was President Obama. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Why? Because the one person who does not have to pass a security background investigation to have access to everything that's classified is the person the people of the United States elect to be president of the United States. They are granted a clearance by being elected. And remember, Obama told you that he asked about all this stuff, and he told you recently in multiple television appearances where it was pretty clear to me that the questions and answers were scripted ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
And sure that's okay now because he's a private citizen.
Right.
He can't be accused of unethical behavior when he is a private citizen and he can arrange whatever. So like the Stephen Colbert interview where that was so clearly scripted, but it doesn't matter. He admitted that he had an interest in this stuff. And so I'm just telling you, when Obama was president, he could have authorized whoever was in charge of these secrets at the special access coordinating committees to release it to Tom DeLonge for whatever reason.
Have you, and I totally believe that. Have you ever seen, so do you know Ben Hansen?
Yeah.
Or no, Ben. Okay.
Yeah.
So Ben is awesome. And as you know, he worked for the FBI at one point, and he has done talks on, and I think you might be able to find one, it might be a video on YouTube where he talks about the body language and micro movements of former U.S. presidents when they've been asked the question about UFOs. And this was several years ago. So this was before kind of all of this stuff came out. And their reactions to it. And it's fascinating. Like just the things that he notices. And Obama was one of the presidents. I think Clinton was another one. It's great. If you guys haven't seen it, highly recommend it. It's
well, and of course, we might as well identify Ben Hansen is on multiple Travel Channels and Discovery Channel programs, dealing with UFOs and so forth. And he was on the recent Expedition X with Josh Gates, where he was a commentator. And it is becoming really difficult to lie. So because artificial intelligence is doing exactly what you're talking about. They're reading facial expressions, mannerisms, voice modulation, stress level detection, and they're looking at these people giving these video testimonies, and they're able to a very high probability detect a true statement or a false statement. And I found that the most interesting thing about that program that Josh Gates. And the other thing I found interesting is that Jim Semivan said it must be aliens.
He must be.
That was pretty cool.
That was awesome. Yeah, Ben's awesome. I'm gonna have him on hopefully maybe in the fall. He said he's under contract right now. He can't do any interviews at the moment, but he's going to come on at some point.
That'd be great. I really like him. I feel he's did a really good job with the show. He was clearly the star of.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And then did you ever watch Fact or Fake Paranormal Files when that was on? That was
never have.
Oh, you would love that one. You would love that one. It's good. But Armando has a great question too. Elizondo says particle accelerator experiments are getting us closer to understanding UAP propulsion because they warp space-time on quantum scales. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do not believe that is an accurate statement. Okay, so let me explain. So I told you how I am. I'm an educator. So particle accelerator experiments are showing us all sorts of things about whether or not the standard model of particles is correct. But everything done by our best accelerators, the closest they can get to gravity is, it's flat space-time. They just can't concentrate enough energy or matter in a small enough space to show gravity. And that is because gravity is orders and orders of magnitude weaker than the weakest of the other forces. Gravity is exceedingly weak, and it's only with large conglomerations of matter do we see the impact of gravity. And of course, gravity kind of runs our lives, so it was the first thing we learned, long before we learned how the atoms work. But it's just, and Einstein did a great job of giving us a general description of how the macroscopic behavior of particles work and warping space-time. But in our ability to understand quantum field theory, we don't have enough energy and mass concentrated to see real gravity work. And so let me explain to you one more thing. Well, if I wanted to prove that gravitons existed and gravity was a quantum field, I would have to have a detector that it would allow me to detect gravitons. So a graviton detector would be so energetic and so massive to be effective, it would be a black hole. So I'm just telling you, it's impossible. So, but what we're hoping to do is eliminate noise and other things that interfere with experiments. So that we take particles and we get them really, 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 really cold, almost down to absolute zero, and then watch them interact, get them entangled, watch them interact. If we see evidence of a gravitational effect between these super cold particles that are entangled, we'll have our first evidence that quantum gravity is real. Right now, we don't even know how to do that experiment.
Wow, that is crazy. I've been listening. Every time my daughter gets in the car, she's like, oh, more space stuff. But I've been listening to Michio Kaku on like audiobooks every time I'm driving. He has my mind just spinning. Like with the book on, which one is it? I can't remember. But anyways, but he's talking about, he takes all of these like science fiction concepts, such as, teleportation or wormholes, or which, I mean, obviously we know we have some theories on these, but other things such as like warp speed. And he talks about how they may or may not be realistic. And he kind of gives sort of a time frame as to what he thinks we might understand the science at that point in time. But I mean, all of it is just so fascinating to me. But thank you, Anthony. Yes, that was Thomas Edison. There's 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Because he did try 1,000 different things until he succeeded.
Yep.
So he was an experimentalist. And of course, his main rival was all of our fan, Nikola Tesla, who in the last couple of days had his 165th birthday.
Oh, did he?
And, yeah, Nikola Tesla, a lot of people don't know that even though Nikola Tesla didn't kind of win the commercial battle, he won the war with Thomas Edison. And that's the reason we have AC current in our homes, not DC current, which Edison was about, because Nikola Tesla understood electromagnetic theory, and he could do calculations that showed why we needed AC. That's why he won.
Yes. Did you ever read where Nikola Tesla said he believed that he got a lot of his information through downloads from extraterrestrials?
Yep. So, and
didn't Einstein say the same thing too?
I'm not aware of Einstein ever saying that or even hinting it, but I do know this. There are some interesting things around Tesla. He was kind of cut off from the world and so forth, and died a pauper, living alone as a loner in a drab hotel room.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump's uncle,
John Trump,
who was a big time engineer at MIT and worked for Vannevar Bush from MJ12,
of course,
and gobbled up all of Tesla's works from his everywhere he could get them. brought them in and did whatever analysis was ever done on them. Of course, they never came back out. And Trump, John Trump, told everyone, including Bush, etc., in whatever public releases were allowed, that it was a nothing burger. There was nothing there, whether that's true or not.
I mean, come on. He had, in his notes, I think it was either in his notes or the FBI notes. At some point, they said that there were 80 trunks of basically his paperwork, his notes that he had jotted down. And then somehow there only became 60 trunks. And in 60 trunks worth of notation by Nikola Tesla, there's nothing. Like, come on. Really? There's a great show called The Tesla Files. You'd probably love it if you haven't seen it. I think it's on Amazon Prime right now. It's so good. And it's all about this. It's all about, they talk about some of Nikola Tesla's experiments and they try to conduct them. Travis Taylor, he's on that show.
Yeah.
And who's awesome. I love him simply for the fact that he says UFO.
So for the 165th birthday, amateur radio operators are putting on this big deal celebrating Nikola Tesla. And the Nikola Tesla Society is rebuilding his laboratory on Long Island. And they are building the wireless electricity energy transmission tower to make it work. And they're soliciting donations. People, please Google, if you care to see Tesla's work become a big deal, this is a way.
Yes, that's amazing. That is awesome. Even if they get the one tower up, I mean, at least the people around them will be able to have wireless. That's incredible. That's awesome. Yeah. So on that show, they also recreated. So his famous experiment where he was showing wireless electricity and he put the light bulbs in the ground and they all lit up for like 22 miles, I think it was. They did that experiment. They didn't do it for quite so long, but they did it. Were able to get the light bulbs to light up. It was awesome. I have a question for you. Okay. So have you watched The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch at all?
Yes.
Okay. So recently they were talking about that they found that there was like conductivity in the soil, right?
Yep.
Now, and they acted like that was unusual. But then again, I'm not sure if Travis was saying it was unusual because of the way that it was working, because I think he said they would need a transformer underground or something in order to complete the circuit the way that they did. But then on that show, The Tesla Files, part of one of Nikola Tesla's experiments was they had like the 2 Tesla coils basically that were close enough that they were able to interact. And then I think they had one going into the ground. I don't know if there was another like electrode that was going. Anyway, somehow they were transmitting the electricity through the soil as well. So then I was wondering, like, well, what makes that so strange about Skinwalker Ranch then? I mean, I understand like that there would be conductive materials in the soil. That makes sense.
So a lot of people don't realize that basically all soil conducts electricity.
Yeah.
It just does it through a high resistance. So the issue would be if the soil in and around Skinwalker Ranch had an unusually low resistance to electricity.
Okay, so that's why it would be emitting the higher.
Well, so if there are magnetic fields nearby, there would be extremely high current running through the soil because a changing magnetic field in and around a conductor induces a current. Okay, so a lot of people don't realize that actually with bigger technology and further development, Thomas Edison would have won the war against Tesla because the right way to build out a really big grid right now to transfer power all around the country much more efficiently than we're doing it now is to use DC. And what you do is you have a single wire that carries the DC current in the forward direction. And then you have a massive ground field of wires that is the return circuit. And why does this work? So there is Ohm's law, which says the resistance burns power by most efficiently if it's a low voltage and a high current. and the power wasted through resistance goes up as the square of the current. So if you raise the voltage and you drop the current by the square root, it's massively more efficient. I mean, squared is just a big deal compared to linear. Okay, so you transmit the power through a massive high voltage, millions of volts over a single wire, and the return current comes back through the soil. It's a humongous win. And it's these towers with these 3 or 4 conductors on them comes to 1.
That would be great.
And not only that, rather than being that big, it's about the size of my pinky, but it has millions of volts on it. And why doesn't that fry the wires? Because remember what I said, the voltage is so high, the current goes down like the square. So the current is so small, the wire barely heats up, and you don't waste power in heating the wire. So Edison would have won if he understood electromagnetics and could have built high voltage systems, but he couldn't.
Yeah. Let's see. So Dave has a question. What would be the fallout, if any, of the huge electromagnetic fields created by soil transmission?
Nada. But the reason is that the voltages trapped inside the wires would be small, and the wires would be shielded so that there's not much magnetism leaking out. And in order to induce a lot of crap in and around in the environment, you'd have to have a changing magnetic field. And so if you trap these what currents there are and very high voltage inside of a shield, it really wouldn't have a much impact. I just feel that if we are going to build major transmission lines going forward in a smart grid, we need to use extremely high voltage DC because of all these benefits, including the obvious import of Dave Hurley's remark.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think ideally Tesla's wireless energy would be amazing, but
that would be even better.
I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No.
I don't think the electric companies would go for that one. So you said if there was it's back to kind of Skinwalker Ranch. I'm still thinking about that. So the soil would be more highly conductive if there was a fluctuating magnetic field. Is that correct?
No. If the soil is more highly conductive, a fluctuating magnetic field would induce a current in that conductive soil. Okay. So there would be a current in the soil caused by the fluctuating magnetic field. Because remember, magnetism and electricity are really the same field.
Right.
And that's what Maxwell taught us with the EM theory he showed us, is that magnetism and current are part of the two faces of the same thing.
Yes. Okay. So I wonder if that fluctuating magnetic field could have anything to do with the reported portals on Spacewalker Ranch.
It depends on how portals are made. So what I believe that quantum electrodynamics does indeed have something to do with portals. And here's why.
Okay.
One of the most famous physicists in the world is Juan Maldacena. He's at the Institute for Advanced Studies in Princeton, and he wrote a brilliant scientific paper which shows that wormholes, which are like a candidate for a portal, are made stable stable long term. And even traversable. You can go through the portal or wormhole if entangled particles are sent through to either side of the wormhole. The entanglement of those particles keeps the wormhole open and stable. And that's a paper by one of the most famous physicists in the world.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm going to have to read that. That's incredible. I love it.
Yes, an amazing paper.
Yes. So Dave has this question, and then I do want to get to something else that I wanted to talk about with you. So I think he's going back to Skinwalker Ranch. So they were saying there was something creating a fluctuating magnetic field under the ground, or were they saying there must be a fluctuating magnetic field under the ground?
Okay, so given what I have seen of their sensors, there is a fluctuating electromagnetic field around. And on occasion, it gets high enough to cause damage to the human body.
Yeah.
Because Travis and others have had radiation burns and so forth.
Like
so the thing that's and again, I don't have scientific evidence of this, but I keep wanting to bring back the idea of how one might do a warp field to explain the travel characteristics of an unidentified aerial phenomenon in UFOs. And I point you out to Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff, who've talked about this a lot. So let's suppose that something is generating these portals and using them, traverse them by using some kind of warp field.
Right.
Okay, anything that's spending energy to make an electromagnetic field puts off heat.
Right.
Okay, but let's have one of these warp drives. The heat is infrared photons. But once you have one of these warp fields around it, the thing inside, the infrared photons go through a blue shift. And what does that mean? Their frequency changes. And it can get a really high frequency. So if they can go from turning on a warp field and they have these infrared photons go inside the warp field coming out, they would be blue shifted all the way up to X-rays and gamma rays maybe, and now they're burning people.
Wow.
So it's just, I know it's hard to understand, but that's the gist of it, is heat coming from a mechanical contraption inside a warp field has the photons of heat shifted by the gravitational distortion to something that may be very deadly, like gamma rays and X-rays. And the reason, you want to doubt this is that normally happens around black holes and neutron stars. So it's hard. I'm just saying that's a physically capable mechanism.
Now, okay, so I have a question. So say we were able to create this warp field, right? And travel at the speed needed to quickly get from one place to another, one star to another. Would it not affect the people inside? Wouldn't the time would remain the same or slow for them? It would slow down, right? If they're moving faster than the speed of light. So wouldn't years and years be going by?
Okay, so we don't know how the time changes for them if they are moving faster than the speed of light.
Right.
So inside these warp fields, space-time is flat. So their clock would be the same for everything else that's inside the warp field. But we don't know enough to say how a clock on their spacecraft inside that warp field would move relative to a clock that's outside the warp field. And just so you know, nobody knows how to measure the speed of light. It's never been measured.
Right. Well, Einstein said you couldn't go faster.
You cannot measure the speed of light. But there's no absolute speed of light in the universe. What you can measure is if I have an observer over here and one over here, and this one emits photons, the other observer sees the photons moving at the speed of light relative to themselves. And so this is the thing that Einstein discovered with a special theory of relativity, is relative velocity of light between two different observers is a constant, no matter what their motion is with respect to each other. It's just very, very difficult and has really difficult consequences. But that's the big deal is, but no one knows how to measure the, quote, absolute speed of light because everything's in motion with respect to everything else. And the speed of light is measured as relative velocity for the photons that are being emitted and observed by something else.
Okay. All right. So do you ever think that we will get to, and let's just, the speed of light, we'll use that, in general terms. Do you think we will ever get to that point where we will be able to travel faster than the speed of light in order to get from one star to another in a relatively short amount of time?
Okay, so the Lentz paper on wormholes gives us hope. Okay, it gives us hope. And the reason we have hope, we didn't before when Alcubierre did his warp drive that allowed us to go faster than the speed of light. We needed a weird thing called negative energy or negative matter.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that negative energy and negative matter is a real thing from quantum field theory.
Right.
But it's only ever present in virtual particles that don't become real, except Hawking showed us that the environment around a black hole allows negative and positive virtual particles to become real. The negative energy and negative mass particles go inside the black hole and disappeared from the universe, and the positive particles become real and go out into the universe. Okay, but what Alcubierre said is we need to find a magic bullet that allows us to trap a bunch of these negative particles and negative matter. And if we do that, then we can make one of these warp fields that allow us to travel faster than the speed of light. But Lentz and others have come up with new formulations of the brilliant work by Alcubierre that no longer require this exotic matter.
Oh.
And okay, but the deal is we have no clue how to engineer what they're doing. So it's a theory that looks promising, but we don't have any engineering solution that makes it practical yet.
That's always the problem. Come on, Bob. Come on, help us out here. All right, so Excalibur Full, I always want to say Excalibur Full has this question. How are portals / warp drives a reasonable answer? I'm not even drinking tonight. I think I talk better when I can drink. A reasonable answer at all for UAP propulsion, if even assuming non-exotic matter, it would most likely take more than the mass energy of the entire craft to open it.
Okay, so again, this is a new science. This is new, all new, and all of this development has happened in the last 2 decades. 3 decades. Alcubierre wrote his paper quite a while ago, but all the recent work is in the last few years. We're at the beginning of this. So because of the awesome potential for this, people are going to keep trying. And so in order to study the field generation where you're doing modulation or changing the space-time metric so you could have a warp field, we're at the beginning of this. Yeah. So they are so hard to simulate on a computer that we've tried a trillionth of what we need to try to find the right thing. So as our computers get better, as we have more understanding, we find alternate ways to do this and to simulate it, we are likely to find solutions to the space-time metric engineering that gives us a warp field that don't require all this craziness. And the only reason I say that is the observed things for the Nimitz, the Roosevelt, and since the 1940s and before even, Foo Fighters and so forth.
Yeah.
They are, if you accept all this, and we're on this show because we accept some of this is real.
Right.
They are actually doing it, and they cannot require nearly infinite amounts of energy or matter to move around. So there's some part of this that we don't understand, but we have a phenomenon which is preaching to us, shouting to us that this is real and it's possible to do it without infinite amounts of energy. Or we have it all wrong.
Right. Right. Which is also possible. So most of science is just theory. So, Michael, I see your question and I want to get to it, but hold on a second. Dave's question kind of pertains to what we're talking about now, and then we'll talk about Michael's question as well. Here's another. If you could exceed the speed of light, travel outside the boundaries of the universe, could you look and see the origin of the universe? Big Bang. See, this is why Dave Hurley and I have good conversations.
Okay, so there are all sorts of ugliness if you can travel faster than the speed of light. Causality fails, time travel is possible, all these other things. And we don't know, but again, there's possible physics that prevents us from traveling backwards. And that's because our futures are quantum mechanical, and our futures are uncertain, because even though we are beings made out of matter, the governance for how they evolve in time going forward is quantum mechanical. But all the past is classical. So you're going forward with your quantum uncertainty backwards in time is really a mess when it comes to your uncertainty going backward in time where everything is classical. So there's kind of this dividing line between everything going forward is quantum mechanical and uncertain, and everything backwards is certain and classical because it's already happened. So it is clear that we have these hints, but we don't know enough.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot to look forward to then.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you're probably going to know where I'm going to go with this question. I'm going to go a little bit different. But yes, Michael, what if you could identify every creature, including humans, based on energy?
Okay, so that's a good question.
It is.
But I am going to tell you, we have known the answer since 1905. 1905, we learned the answer. And what did we learn in 1905? E equals mc squared.
Yes.
Energy and matter are two forms of the same thing. Okay, I'm just telling you, Einstein told us that matter and energy are convertible to each other. We may not know the process for all such conversions, but we knew enough to blow Hiroshima and Nagasaki off the face of the earth.
Right. You're talking to a witch. That's the basis of our belief, is that everything is energy. So therefore, that's how we do our spell.
Okay, so even this notion of particles, which came from classical physics, is not right, because those things we describe as particles are energetic fluctuations in the quantum fields describing their behavior.
Yeah.
So the quantum electron field is a little packet of energy constrained to a small space is an electron.
Yeah.
So it's still a little energetic excitation. It's not really something solid and a point. It's actually an energetic field excitation. So we already know that everything is energy. We already know that. And we've known it since 1905.
Right. Dave's question. I know where he's getting to, and I have the same question. UFO, right? No space-time. Meant to be a goofy question, but space-time unfolded in something. He's talking about the Big Bang, right? Not ether, but something. What is beyond the boundaries of I'm assuming he means our universe. What is beyond the boundaries of our universe?
Okay, so the answer is very dissatisfying and unsatisfying.
Okay.
I'm going to dissatisfy him by being unsatisfactory. Okay, so the edge of our universe is moving away from us at close to the speed of light. And that means we cannot observe we cannot observe it at all. We can't see it. So I want to give everybody an analogy of why. So it's kind of easier to understand. Let's take an aircraft, and it zooms faster and faster until it exceeds the speed of sound. Okay, every sound that aircraft makes never reaches us because it's moving away from us faster than the speed of sound. So its sound waves are kind of blocked off and all this other stuff. that's completely analogous to things that are moving away from us at the speed of light. So whatever's out there that's moving away faster than the speed of light, we can never know about it or interact with it, given our understanding of physics. So if there's a new understanding of physics that makes all of this different, maybe. Yeah. But right now, we don't know how. And so it doesn't exist because I can't do an experiment on it.
Yeah. But I have a theory, though, that there is something outside the boundaries of our universe. So when the Big Bang happened and everything was condensed to a tiny little, speck, what was it in? But, in science, we've discovered that as you get smaller and smaller and smaller, there are things that are smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So the reverse would have to be true. As you get larger and larger and larger, there are things that are larger.
So the way we view the universe and the theories that work says we were a blob.
Yeah.
And this blob suddenly exploded and it expanded. But everything we know is matter. All the energy we know is inside the blob. And it's just expanding.
Right.
And so everything we know or even can know is inside of this blob. Now, recent theories say that the Big Bang was not quite this point thing that we thought it was, that it's much more complicated than that. And so, but we have ways to test this. And what are the ways we can test it? One of the greatest things we ever discovered was discovered by Penzias and Wilson, who were trying to explain this unknown crazy noise that was wrecking microwave transmissions when they worked for Bell Labs. So they took these great big antennas and they pointed it everywhere, and they saw this radiation, microwave radiation coming at them from every direction in nearly equal amounts. This was the remnants of whatever the Big Bang was.
Interesting.
And so this cosmic microwave background is what we're going to look at to understand these kind of weirdnesses that we're talking about. So what we're looking for is things that make it inhomogeneous. It's supposed to be really smooth, but to the extent it's not, or it has voids or imperfections or whatever, that's extremely revealing about physics we don't understand, and we will learn a lot by that.
Yeah. I have a theory about the universe. You want to hear it?
Go for it.
I think the universe in its entirety is in the shape of a torus. And so the Big Bang happened when we started to expand. And then the theory is that at some point we will stop expanding and start contracting and repeat the process all over. So then we're going back around, and that's when we contract and then we expand.
I don't see any reason why that can be wrong. So the issue with the torus is there's a hole in it, and you're trapped. You're trapped. So if every point in it is like the center of the toroid, the donut as you go around it, that would be a deal, and it could be expanding, and we would not know that we're on a torus,
right? Because
it would be like the ant walking on a tape, or walking on a pencil.
Yeah.
So ants walking up a pencil. We can see the ant walking up the pencil because the pencil we can see. But what we really can't see is the ant walking around the pencil if we get far enough away. So what you're talking about is things that are like the circumference of the pencil that is so far away we can't see that it has a circumference. Yeah. And not only that, the angular resolution required for us to see the circumference of the pencil is quantum mechanically impossible. It's so far away. Yeah. So it's just the strictures imposed on us by gravitation and general relativity on the one hand, and quantum mechanics on the other, times can be very frustrating, but it's also exhilarating.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, that's it. We've proven the universe is shaped like a donut.
It can be.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, so to go back to, I think it was Michael who had the question about basically energy frequencies, right? So you know where I'm going with this, right? In the UAP report, one of the things they talked about was that they were able to see, or what did it say? I can't think of how they worded it. The RF energy from these. Really, my brain just must need alcohol to work. The energy signatures from the craft.
Yeah,
there
good.
We go.
Yeah, okay,
yes.
got it.
Yes. So let's talk about that. What does that mean? I mean, I understand what that means, but I don't know.
So I'll give you a specific example because it's been mentioned multiple times, especially in the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Remember people talking about the UAP committing an act of war.
Mm-hmm.
I want to explain to you what that means and why they're saying it. So these fighter jocks and these Super Hornets have been equipped with all sorts of sensors and mechanisms. And these sensors and mechanisms include radar of various types. Yeah. So they emit a radar impulse, and their radar receiver, listening for the return impulse, shows all this unbelievable interference coming in on the radar frequency. And it appears on their radar screen like stripes or other weird things. This can only have been done by something being emitted in the RF regions by the UAP. So the UAP was actively jamming them.
Yeah.
That is an act of war because they are inside controlled airspace of a carrier fleet. So every one of these incidents where all this craziness has happened, and the carrier fleets or the task force, that like these battleships and cruisers that have gone out, they have been ordered not to fire. Otherwise, they have the right to defend themselves unless and until it goes against their orders. So their rules of engagement don't allow them to fire at these entities. Otherwise, they would not subject their ships and their commands to the risk of something coming that close.
Yeah. So to the average person, what does that mean? Like, what is the importance of them?
They're jamming our radars. That means they understand our radars, and they're transmitting something that suppresses our radar's effectiveness, so they can't lock on.
Do you think that they were actively jamming our radars, or simply that the energy they were emitting was jamming our radars?
Their pulses showed up on the screen, and this is very, very typical of a radar jammer.
Gotcha.
It cannot happen at random. It has to have been on purpose. They quickly analyzed how the radars worked and jammed them. Now, there are classified things I know about these radars that I am not allowed to say, but what the facts are, our radars are not designed by dummies.
Right.
And they are designed to avoid that kind of jamming by doing some things that are really unique to our kinds of radar systems. It didn't matter. The UAP jammed them anyway. That means they understood and predicted how our radar systems would work well enough to jam them. Wow. That is really scary.
Right, except they were ordered not to fire on them. That tells me they know something about it that they're not telling us. They either know what it is.
So I don't know about in 2004 when we got this evidence of jamming, but in 2014 and 2019, we knew enough to know.
Yeah.
And they were told not to fire. Now, so I have this deep suspicion that 2019 was a poke in the eye of the dragon to see what it would do. And look, we do that and have done it for all the years we have been a country. We test the defenses of our potential adversaries to see how they react to unusual circumstances. And that is exactly what we were doing with that cruiser task force when we went out there and didn't fire them. I believe that we were poking at them to see how they would react. That's number one. And number two, we poked at them in a way we thought might get a response, and we did.
Okay.
Because we've done that forever. That's how we have learned how the Soviet Union and now Russia would defend itself through the air. And we do that so we can find ways to avoid it if needed.
Right. Okay. Linda has a question, and I'm not sure. I don't know what spaceship she's referencing, so hopefully you do. Do you think that a spaceship... Oh, no, I'm sorry, the rocket. Do you think that a spaceship is what moved that rocket so it would blow up and not call for war?
I just don't know enough to answer the question. I can make guesses, and my guesses would be pure guesses because a lot of the stuff, it requires more data than I have to make a credible guess. So I prefer not.
Okay. Excalibur says, if they had a gravity drive, would the frequency shift even allow for a return radar signal or shadow?
So we would detect that it was happening, except in the case where the radar signals were being jammed, the craft was stationary or nearly so. So, and we know that they return radar signals because Kevin Day saw them for days on the Princeton with the Aegis radar system that was on board, the Spy 1 radar. And that was how he learned of their strange activities and talked his captain and the fleet commander into allowing him to send Alex and David Fravor, out to inspect them. That was the radar returns that showed weird things happening was what Kevin and others used to get permission to send Alex and David Fravor out.
Interesting. All right. Well, I still think there's something more if they were if they told them not to fire. I think there was more.
No, well, so this was a exercise, and they don't want people shooting each other down in these training exercises. So Alex and David went out with no weapons. They had no weapon loads. So they couldn't have fired if they wanted to.
Oh, okay. Okay. Not that I want them to fire on it, just, just saying. Kronos says, in the report it mentioned RF communication from the craft. If that's remotely true, then we should be able to jam them as well as a form of communication, like a love tap saying, hi, we see you. I don't think they specified communication. They just said that there was RF energy. They did not say
it was a digital communication signal. They just said it was RF emanation. And I've given you a reported form of RF emission from the UAPs in the form of jamming. That's not to say it was the only thing. It's just the thing that's been reported.
Gotcha. Well, it'll be interesting to see what more comes of that. So there, I wonder if there is more though, because in my brain, I'm thinking, okay, I know that we can identify a fighter jet in the sky that we can't see based on its RF emission. Aren't we able to tell something more about the UAPs as well?
Yes. Everything, every form of emanation from those craft reveals something about them. Mm-hmm. Now, it is a lot of people don't quite get the most astonishing things that the emanations or lack thereof told us about these craft.
Yeah.
Anything that we know how to build that flies through our air sends out a ton of heat from the exhaust of the jet or the rotor wash, etc. And we can see it easily in the infrared things that will, like the FLIR of the Tic Tac that Craig, what's his name, got after Fravor and Alex came back and another group was sent out. So that FLIR showed the thing was really hot because it was black is the hottest thing it can register. That thing was as black as it could be, so it was really hot. But there were no hot plumes coming out in any direction, showing the form of propulsion that kept them up in the air. I mean, it's just, it has to be physics that we don't understand.
Right. But that's exciting to me.
Very exciting.
Oops, sorry, I'm making all kinds of noise. Yeah. Okay. I also want to talk to you about hypersonic weapons. This has been my newest fascination. I'm a weird cat. So hypersonic weapons have been something that prior to the report, they were saying that it's possible that these UAPs that we're seeing are hypersonic weapons from Russia and China. Now, I think that's utter bull, but I want to hear your thought on it.
Totally disagree.
Okay.
Because we can't find the method of propulsion.
Right.
So they're moving faster than 5 times the speed of sound. So they're hypersonic. That's the definition. Right. But we see no method of propulsion. I promise you, everything that comes from Russia and China has a rocket exhaust or a jet.
Yes.
It's just not there.
Interesting. Right. And a hypersonic weapon would not be able to go in and out of the water.
No, that would kill it instantly.
Right.
It would break apart.
It has don't they usually have like a scramjet engine?
Yeah, but you throw water in it. But if you hit the water, look, water is incompressible.
Yes.
So you hit it, it's like hitting a brick wall, especially at high speeds. And where I mean high, I mean a few hundred miles an hour. It's like hitting a brick wall. 5 times the speed of sound. That's as hard as hitting the dirt.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just because water's incompressible.
Yeah. Right. So I think, and not only that, but the maneuvers that these UAP are making, I mean, hypersonic weapons, from what I remember, they do kind of do this, right? It's a little bit of a wobbly path that they take, but they're not like stopping and going and taking a right turn. And, they're not capable of doing
they're ballistic. They cannot do non-ballistic motion. Non-ballistic motion requires too many G's to be made by anything on Earth.
Yeah. Right.
If you the thing that aggravates the crap out of me is they know these things are not made by humans. They're not. They're using physics that no human knows how to do.
Right. Right. So I wonder, well, for one thing, that excites me because that to me says, okay, if they're here and clearly they're not shy about showing themselves, then hopefully at some point we can start to learn something about the physics that they know or that they're using that we haven't just figured out yet. So that's exciting to me. But I wonder, how much does the government already know? Because again, they tell them not to fire on them, whether or not they had, anything in the chamber or not. If they're told not to fire on them, to me, that says they know who or what this is.
So, or they're testing. Remember, Russia and China are adversaries, but we still fly too near to their airspace so we can see their response. And because we don't know what that response might entail. So that doesn't mean we know everything these things might do just because we're poking at them. Because we're trying to figure out how they work, we want to get a response from them that gives us information. And the thing I'm certain of is the things that have been happening off near Catalina and off the Virginia and Florida coasts. There have been dozens of sensors that have collected all sorts of data that we're never going to hear about.
Yeah. And Michael was agreeing with you. Even mechanical things can't handle those G's.
No. Right. No. Anything we can build would fold under the thousands of G's those things are exhibiting.
Yes. So, okay, let's think about whenever I'm talking to people who've telling me about their UFO experiences or showing me pictures or what have you, more often than not, it's talking. I'm always trying to rule out, okay, let's rule out what's plausible before we can talk about what's possible, right? So I'm looking at things like experimental aircraft, advanced aircraft that you just, you're not aware of and not be able to identify. Like a vapor cone, I think, could be something that, if seen, would look very strange to someone. What are your thoughts on any or all of these things?
Okay, so your audience may not know that I am an experiencer. And I now have evidence and have been told of experiences that I had when I was young.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a really clear memory of them until I began to recall these memories, given the experiences I had in the presence of Chris Bledsoe when I visited him.
Okay.
So I saw a non-ballistic motion, no obvious means of propulsion, and other things from the whatever these things were that flew over our head.
Yeah.
And then I saw these things popping into existence like flash bulbs right over my head and so forth.
Right.
And it just opened me up to all sorts of weirdness since then. So
yes.
I'm a consistent experiencer in that once I've had one of these experiences that I can see and remember, other things begin to happen, and that has happened to me, just like it has to many others. But I'm just telling you, in the things that I have seen and the things I have been told about, they are not possibly made by humans using anything that I am aware of. Now, again, I just truth will set you free. I have had really high security clearances.
Yeah.
And people can go look at the list of people who follow me on Twitter, and it will shock a lot of people who follow me. But what I'm telling you is I have never been read in to any of these programs where they have craft or they're studying this problem, because my job was doing something different. And so though I had security clearances, I had no need to know about UFOs or UAPs. So what I am telling people, based on my scientific and engineering knowledge and my experience with dealing with military and other things, is I know of no mechanism that can be taught in any physics or engineering class at any university that will explain anything of what these things can do.
Okay. And I understand what you're saying, and I don't think that all UFO experiences can be explained away. I don't want to come across that way. And I do want to get back to this, but Dave wants me to ask you about your, I guess, the experience you guys had together.
Okay, so we really didn't have it together, but we did.
Okay.
So what does that mean?
Oh, I remember what he's.
Okay, so
okay.
This is my Fitbit.
Yes.
This is my Fitbit Versa 3. Okay. So Dave calls me on the phone one morning, and he says, I had the weirdest dream. At least I think it was a dream. Was it a dream? I don't know if it was a dream or not. But I dreamed that you and I and Olaf Phillips, we were abducted together and taken aboard a craft and so forth. And I went, well, Dave, I don't have any memory of this at all. I said, I'm kind of tired this morning, but I don't have a memory.
Yeah.
And my wife says to me, having overheard this conversation, she says, I got up in the middle of the night because I heard things moving around the house and I wanted to figure out what it was. She said, I never could find anything, but I just don't know what that noises were. And it was clearly footsteps and so forth. So I went to investigate, and I couldn't wake you up, and I investigated, but I couldn't find anything. So she came back to bed, and I didn't know that she had even gotten up.
Yeah.
So Dave told me, and then she told me, and her tale on top of Dave's caused me to take my smartphone and open up the Fitbit app and look at the history of its sensors.
Yes.
And its sensors told me that I had been awake and moving around for an hour and a half around the same time. Dave says that we were off on the way together, and Sharon told me that things were moving around in our house. Okay, so that is the gist of what I can say about this experience, I have no memory of it. And a lot of experiencers likely to be listening to this or hearing about it later will want to know why I don't know. And the reason is because of my, this is going to be everybody's favorite answer because they hate it when Lou Elizondo does it. But because of my NDAs and my lifetime requirements, I am not allowed to undergo regression.
Yes, I've heard you say that before, which is very interesting to me. Very interesting. Okay. Poor Troy. Troy, I'm so sorry. I have seen you ask this question like at least 3 times now, and I keep meaning to get to it. So I'm going to stop our conversation where it's at right now and ask this. Which, by the way, great name, Troy SR71. Oh, that gets my heart. My favorite. I said it on Twitter not too long ago. The SR71 will always be my first love. I
love Jim Goodall. I could listen to him for hours talking about SR71 and the ox cart.
It's amazing. It's so amazing. Okay.
Oh, I love Goodall.
All right. Okay. Poor Troy. Let's answer his question. So if we can't go back in time, is it mathematically possible to go forward into the future?
Okay. So there are physicists who have written papers describing how one might build a system that could transmit information into the future, but only from the moment where they turn the device on.
All right, say that again.
Okay. There's a physicist, well-known physicist.
Yes.
He has a very, very easy description. He's a brilliant man. He's a beautiful man. He's a black guy with a kind of big afro.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
that is at the University of Connecticut physics department. Okay. Yeah. So he has shown that you can build a machine.
Okay.
That if he turned it on in his lab.
Yes.
100 years from now, you could receive the message if you tuned in a receiver, because it would send messages into the future. And because I believe that quantum information is the basis for everything in the universe, that we are all about being information. The fact that you can transfer information into the future says the answer to his question is it is mathematically possible to send stuff to the future. Because remember, energy and mass are equivalent.
Right. So has he successfully sent?
No. This is a theoretical paper. It's not an engineering diagram.
Well, why don't they build it and try it?
Because it costs lots and lots of money. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Let me give you a concrete example.
Okay.
Higgs predicted how every particle that is affected by the Higgs mechanism has mass. Why does an electron have mass? Why do protons have mass? Why do neutrons have mass? It cost $100 billion to build the Large Hadron Collider, and all those tens of thousands of scientists, time and money, supported by all of these science funding organizations all around the world for a few billion more just to prove Higgs was right.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about is more complicated than the Higgs mechanism.
Yeah. Well, get on it, Bob. I don't know what to tell you.
We need to figure out how to wave away the need for money, and we could go.
Right. We'll somehow explore my universe theory and make money off of that, and there you go. Then you build all these things for me. All right. So James says, they say the star we look at already burnt out. If we could move the speed of light, we could reach them before they go out. That would count as time travel.
Yes. If you're able to travel faster than the speed of light, you are able to circumvent the causality. You could violate causality if you can travel faster than the speed of light.
Except that we can't travel faster than the speed of light.
We don't know how yet.
Yeah. Unfortunately. If we just get that one thing, you know how, like, you know how much we would like learn from that.
Wow.
I wonder if it's possible. I really do. I think
given the requirement to make such a thing, let's postulate the existence of a warp drive.
Okay.
Immediately, we would never have to drill for another piece of oil, coal. We would never have to have a nuclear reactor because we could power it from the universe for free.
Yeah. Well, okay. Here's my question. So have they found that dark matter does exist?
No.
Or is it still just
I'm sorry. Okay. No. We know it exists.
Okay.
How do we know it exists?
Yes.
Because we can look at a galaxy and we can tell how much mass is in the galaxy because it spins at a certain rate.
Yeah.
And not only that, the spin should have a profile where the things that are further away orbit the center slower than the things that are close in.
Yes.
Okay? If there was no dark matter. The way we discovered dark matter is there are only a handful of weirdo galaxies that don't spin the wrong rate. They spin way too fast. They would fly apart from centrifugal forces if they were spinning this fast without the need for some invisible matter that's holding them together. And so we know something has to be holding them together because all of the visible matter we see from the stars, etc., is not enough to account for their rotational rate. So from the rotational rate and the observable matter, we can measure how much dark matter there is, and we know it has to be there.
But we don't know what it's made up of.
We have no clue what it is. There are reasonable theories now, but we need experiments that can show their existence, and that's a particle called the axion, AXION. But we don't know they exist. We just postulate they could.
So it would seem to me that there is more dark matter in the universe than what is the opposite of dark matter? Just matter?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So if we could figure out what it was made up of, could we not then create a ship that could use something similar to, say, our like scramjet engines, which, take the air in and compress it and use that as a form of combustion? If we could figure out what's in that dark matter, couldn't we do something similar?
Okay, so I'm going to tell this is an excellent question, and I'm going to tell you why you already know it can't.
Okay.
You already know it can't. Why? Because we can't observe it or interact with it and to figure out what it is. What that means is nothing that we do can impact what dark matter does. Because we can't engineer it anything, because if it interacted with regular matter, we would already know what it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't bounce light off of it. Why? Because as light goes through it, it's not scattered by it. So it doesn't interact with photons. It doesn't interact with matter other than through its gravitational field. So we know it curves light around it. We know it's massive, but it has no other impact that we can observe on any other particle or entity inside the standard model. So the answer is we can't do a damn thing with it because we can't interact with it.
Okay. Man, there is like so much we just don't know yet, isn't there?
Oh, no kidding. No. 95% of the universe is unknown to us. Dark matter and dark energy, we have no clue what they are.
Yeah. Right. Now, I thought, you know what? I think it was in the Michio Kaku book that I was looking at. I want to say, and I was curious about this, and I was going to go back and listen because I wasn't sure if I heard him correctly, that he said that we've been able to create very small amounts of dark, was it not dark matter? Dark, I guess it would be dark energy.
You're talking about the book is the God equation?
No, I have that though. I haven't read it yet. No, it's like the future of humanity or something along those lines. I can't remember, but
I flat don't think that's right.
Okay.
Because if we could create it, we could interact with it, and therefore we could use it.
Right. Okay. Was it dark matter? Okay, so when we were talking about making a warp drive, you said there was something that we would need, but we don't know how to make it. What was that? Like we'd need mass amounts of
negative matter or negative energy to travel.
That's okay. Negative
but except for reason. Okay, yeah. So this is matter that has a negative mass, a negative energy,
right.
And exactly. So it's just weird. This is
right.
Weird
Yeah.
stuff.
And he said that the only way that, like, we wouldn't be able to access the mass quantities that we would need, because the only way that we've been able to I guess interact with or create is to create it artificially. Is that correct?
So we do not create virtual particles artificially. We don't know how. Okay. We can observe their effects. So we know that virtual particles are real, and there's a sea of negative matter, but it's tied in with positive matter, but they come in and out of existence so fast we can't do anything with them.
Okay. Now is Mike was saying, no, he was talking about antimatter. Is antimatter the same as negative matter?
No.
Okay.
No, antimatter is not. So when Einstein gave us the theory of special relativity, mm-hmm. we had another physicist which wrote down an equation which governed electrons, but also obeyed special relativity for our first quantum field theory. Okay. So he immediately found solutions to this set of equations that were these weird things. He couldn't figure out what they were because no one had ever observed them. But he predicted the existence of these particles which behaved like electrons but had a positive charge. Okay?
Okay.
So then later on, multiple experimental scientists mm-hmm. saw things flying through a magnetic field. So a moving particle with a charge mm-hmm. going through a magnetic field follows a curved path. So if it's positive, it goes up, and if it's a negative charge, it goes down.
Okay.
So we saw these particles going through something you can build in your home called a Wilson cloud chamber. Everybody can build one. And when they look in it in a darkened room, they can see particles from the universe flying through that cloud chamber all the time. And some of them will go up and some of them will go down in a magnetic field. So you put a magnet around it, you see some go up, some go down. Okay. So the ones that go, so the prediction of Paul Dirac, of the existence of this weird particle that had a positive charge, no one had ever seen it. And all of a sudden it was observed by these deflected paths, even though they had exactly the same mass, exactly the same volume of charge. One was positive and one was negative. And it was the proof of the existence of the antimatter particles that Dirac predicted from his first equation of quantum field theory for electrons that obeyed this Einstein's special theory of relativity. And he won the Nobel Prize for that work.
Okay. I know you're going to understand this, but this one's going right over my head. Back in November, some solutions were published where slower than C warp travel. You're going to have to explain to me what C warp travel is. Doesn't require
speed of light. C is the speed of light.
Oh, okay. Okay. Doesn't require exotic negative mass, and it's only required for faster than the speed of light.
That is correct. What he says is correct. So we can't. So a master student at the University of Alabama at Huntsville, and Lentz and others in doing work in Europe have shown that we can theoretically build warp drives that do not need exotic matter and will allow us to travel without expelling junk out the back, like a rocket, and move through space-time in a warp drive without the need for exotic matter. But in order to go faster than light, you need negative matter and energy in their solutions.
Okay.
So this Excalibur full is exactly correct.
So to me, I'm thinking slower than the speed of light Well, we already travel slower than the speed of light. So is there a definition that he's referring to?
No, but look, suppose we wanted to go to visit the nearest star.
Yeah.
We could travel. You and I could hop in there, and we could go and travel for 3 days and take a look and come back in about 3 days and see it. But we would not have traveled faster than the speed of light.
Do you think we could get to the nearest star in 3 days?
Yeah, but with enough warping of space time. I'm exaggerating. Let's make it 3 months.
Okay,
make it 3 years.
All right,
3 days, 3 months, 3 years. Okay. So, but what will have happened is that everyone on Earth that we ever knew would be dead.
Died. Yes. It's always a catch.
There's always a catch.
Aussie Steve says, can Science Bob, the legend that he is, can he post plans to build that device?
I'm happy to post someplace that you can put up the links to the papers that describe this device.
Yes, definitely. At the end, if you can get like the link or something, I'll post it in here. Yeah. Because I would love to see that too. What does this say? Our physics laws won't matter and can be broken in another galaxy or universe. Things may work differently in another place. That is absolutely true. True.
But if there are parallel universes, they don't have to have the same physics we do. But if we jump into the parallel universe, the physics governing our bodies are suddenly different. They might fly apart.
Yeah.
And we would cease to exist.
See, always a catch.
This is always a catch.
Ozzy says, you the man, Science Bob. In space. Okay, so yes, Kira's saying in space time is warped and not the same as on Earth. I think it's more at the the speed that you're traveling, right?
No.
Okay.
On Earth, space time is warped because we are in a gravitational field. Right. Out in the middle of nowhere, space time is flat and not warped at all.
Right. So it's like Einstein called it the fabric of space-time.
Yes, right? And matter tells space how to warp, and the warp tells matter how to move.
Okay.
But if you're away in the middle of nowhere, space-time is flat because there's not enough mass around. So
how does matter tell space-time to warp?
Okay. So again, this is just an awesome question. Because it reveals something that people ought to understand.
Yes, please.
Einstein said, here's an equation that I predict tells you how all this works, but it's a phenomenological explanation. Okay. He nor anyone else understands the ultimate underlying mechanism. It's an equation which tells you how to predict what happens to the things you can observe, but he doesn't tell you how it works. And we know that we don't know how it works because we can't observe a graviton and have quantum gravity. So he wrote down an equation that, unlike anyone that came before, predicted correctly one of the most successful set of equations for prediction ever devised by man. And it predicts things that before him were completely unexplainable. And I'll give you an example. Mercury is very near the gravity well, curved space-time, of the sun.
Yes.
And when it orbits around the sun, it has an ellipse. So it's orbiting around an ellipse. But the ellipse does this as it orbits. The ellipse precesses. The long axis precesses as it orbits many times. That precession is not predicted by Newtonian gravity. It is predicted by Einstein's general theory of relativity to an amazing degree. And the thing that's so great is the stars that are near the sun, their light that goes past the sun is bent around the sun. Mm-hmm. And the same person that proved Einstein was right with the eclipse and the stars also proved that the that the along with Einstein, that the precession of Mercury was predicted by his equations. So that's Arthur Eddington.
Okay.
Arthur Eddington was the person who did experiments and other calculations that made Einstein the most famous physicist that ever lived.
Okay. All right. Sorry, you got my brain thinking. Okay.
I want to agree. I want to agree with Chris Moe.
Okay.
I'm a big time Patreon supporter of PBS Spacetime because that is just about the finest show on YouTube for physics.
Yes. Mary Mother and Goddess Reincarnate, thank you so much for the donation, says, if we can entangle particles, it must mean we're manipulating spatial dimensions. Therefore, we could surely use this knowledge to find a way to teleport. Well, we can teleport, right?
Okay, so this is this has some underlying misunderstandings. Okay, so if we can send particles through some systems, they become entangled by us sending them through these systems. So, but we didn't have to manipulate spatial dimensions at all to make this happen. Okay, so it's particles interacting inside a quantum system that causes them to become entangled. The fact that, Lynn, you're sitting there and I am sitting here says that we are a blob of entangled particles. Otherwise, we would not exist.
Okay.
Okay. So, we and our chemical systems regularly replenish ourselves with entangled particles, which make us solid matter. We're not really solid matter because even though I see you, because the camera's pointing at you, you're actually 99.999% nothing.
Right.
Even though I see you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, and the entanglement of particles. Let me explain to you what entanglement means. If I have a particle and it's entangled with another, the properties of these two particles are statistically correlated. That means if I do something to one, it does something to the other statistically.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what all entanglement means. It's a fancy name for saying this one got tangled up with that one sometime, and they're now statistically correlated. If I hit this coin over here and I get a heads, this one is almost surely always going to get a tail. Okay, that's what entanglement means. It's a statistical correlation that arises from them interacting in a physical system.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the rest of her question then? Can we surely use this knowledge to find a way to teleport?
We already know how to do quantum teleportation.
Yeah.
And we know that because quantum internet is done by entanglement and teleportation. And everybody has one of these devices. And what makes them work? Trillions of atoms in transistors. And transistors work because of quantum teleportation.
Oh, okay. I always wondered how the information got to the phone.
But the devices work because of quantum teleportation. And the reason is they're called semiconductors because they're made of materials which are not conducting. But given they're in these tiny systems, things flow through them, even though they shouldn't under classical theories, because they conduct through things tunneling through the system and teleporting from one place to another. So quantum computing is going to work by entanglement and teleportation. But anyway.
Okay, interesting. 11 says, could some of the effects seen at Skinwalker Ranch be due to radon outgassing?
We would already know if there was lots of radon because radon is radioactive. The Geiger counter would see it happen all the time. Now, there have been some cases where things have shown radioactivity out there correlating to NIDS and Brandon Fugel and his team, but there's not enough of it to have an easily repeatable test. So the things that have been shown out there are ionizing radiation, which are not alpha particles being emitted by a radon atom. The ionizing radiation is like X-rays and gamma rays. I mean, Travis got a burn on him. from ionizing radiation. That was like somebody beamed an X-ray or a gamma ray at him.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what is your theory on that?
Have none. I don't have a clue what could do it.
Yeah.
The show has gotten more interesting.
It's fascinating. It is fascinating.
And
I want to get Travis on the show.
they have benefited tremendously by having this high-powered, go-getter, multiple degreed scientist involved. Because he just wants to go, 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 go. He's high energy.
Travis, yes, for sure. And he says UFOs, which I love.
Well, he's from Huntsville. We're both Alabama boys.
Well, then I expect to hear some UFOs coming out of you. Let's see. Oh, I meant today.
Well, I dressed up tonight. I have on my T-shirt rather than my.
Oh no! Science Bob, teleport back. I'm not sure what happened. Oh, hopefully we'll get him back. We'll see what's going on. So you guys enjoying this conversation while we're waiting for Science Bob to get back? What are you thinking? Oh, did you teleport back to us?
I teleported back.
And yes, you look very fancy tonight.
Yeah. I don't have my overalls on. I put on a good T-shirt.
I love it. I like my T-shirt too.
Yeah, I like it. Get in, loser. Let's go for a ride. So yeah, last night when Samantha was on, I put in the chat, I want to go for a ride awake.
Me too. I think we need to plan one.
Maybe she can arrange that for us.
Yes. They can go get you. They can pick me up. It'd be great. We'll have a great time.
Yeah.
So Kronos says, to your knowledge, have we engineered in zero gravity? If so or not, what would be the benefits of doing so?
We have done all sorts of engineering in zero gravity on the International Space Station. So I'm not following the question.
Okay. Well, let's say I'll do a follow-up question. Then so you said we've done all kinds of engineering zero gravity?
Yeah, and on the International Space Station, a ton of those experiments are engineering experiments to utilize zero gravity. So we have done engineering in zero gravity.
Okay.
But now
engineering zero gravity.
No, we have not engineered zero gravity. We do not know how to do anti-gravity.
Right.
No matter how many crackpots have said we do.
Yeah. Well, that's another one we got to figure out.
You're right. So it would require more energy than our entire fleet of naval ships expend in a year to have the fleet of UFOs hover over the Teddy Roosevelt for a single day. I want people to understand how much energy that would require given our known physics. Is there anti-gravity? If those things are real objects, you're damn tootin'. There's anti-gravity. We just don't know how it works.
Yeah. Right. So I'm always curious, do they know, I mean, obviously they understand physics probably in a different way that we do. So what is powering these craft? They must...
Well, of course, everybody wants there to be... Hal Puthoff wrote this paper decades ago about manipulating the quantum vacuum to get to do actual work using the virtual particles in a quantum vacuum and polarizable quantum. So everyone hopes that that's real because we would have free energy forever if it was true.
Right.
But we don't know how.
All right. So if we were to figure it out, the second half of the question, what would be the benefits of figuring that out?
We could have $0 energy in everything we wanted. We'd never have to buy a battery. We'd never have to fill up our car. We would never have to pay an electric company, period.
Okay. This is an interesting one, and that would be great. So let's just get on that one as well. You got a lot to do, Bob.
Joe has aliens, so I'm going to answer his question.
Okay, yes. So if a couple were to conceive in zero gravity on the space station, that's interesting. What would be the effects on the child, and would it be able to travel to Earth?
It would be doubtful because the things that cause the skeletal structure to grow are the environmental conditions in which the infant is conceived. So it's
so you're
for
thinking
both
basically
the skeletal muscular structure would not be normal.
Okay. So even in the womb when it's developing, it would affect the formation of the baby.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And we already know that problems in early childhood, that in sensory processing things in the brain, don't work if they're denied the signals, which allows the brain's neuroplasticity to adapt the signal processing to use them. Like, for example, kids that have hearing problems when they're young have auditory learning disabilities for the rest of their life, even if their ears recover.
Okay. Well, hopefully nobody should conceive on the space station then. Let's just not do that.
No, I totally agree with you. or we should send up space stations that have a rotating wheel
so they can live there.
So they can live on the outer edges of the wheel and have artificial gravity.
Right. I would go live there. Absolutely would do it. Would you?
If I could go live in an O'Neill cylinder, I would do it in a heartbeat, because I could go look out a window and have the darkest skies ever for my telescope.
There you go. Oh, yeah. Imagine what you'd be able to see. That would be amazing. So Amanda says, if this is going back to the UAPs, if they use so much energy, why can't we detect their movements more reliably?
Because their energy systems are hyper efficient, and we're not seeing the heat generation from their systems. Again, we every physical body puts out all sorts of photons, and we know this because of the work from Planck in the beginning of the 20th century that gave us quantum mechanics. So he explained black body radiation using the earliest form of quantum mechanics, and we know that the black body radiation of anything is determined by its temperature. So we just can't detect them because the things we're seeing are too hot or too cold. And so we're not seeing enough variation to even make a prediction in how they're doing it. We need signal to figure out how these things work.
Yeah. Right. So do you think that there is it even possible? I mean, I guess it isn't to our knowledge to have a propulsion system that doesn't emit heat. Correct?
Okay, so if this audience and you and I believe in UFOs, the answer is we have an existence proof.
Right, but as far as what we've made, we don't have that. Right.
No,
okay.
Because that would imply the existence of a perpetual motion machine, which we can't do.
Okay.
Because the amount of energy that's available in any system to do work is governed by the entropy. That's one of the major laws in thermodynamics.
Okay.
And we don't see any change in entropy in their systems.
Right. Right. Because that would cause heat. Correct.
Yes, and we would see exhaust. We would see exhaust.
Yeah.
We don't see it. We have no clue how they work. We have a fundamental understanding of the foundations of physics, because if you believe these devices exist and are real physical objects, they're exhibiting physics that we do not understand and can't even fathom how it works.
Okay, so that was kind of going to lead me into my next question, which is, so we don't know how they work. Do you have any theories of what they might be using?
So I believe they're using these warp drives.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because they can go from space through the air and into the water and not have sonic booms, not be destroyed by moving through water at high speeds. And this seems to me to imply a warp field around them.
Yeah.
So they're actually manipulating space-time. And remember, whether it's water, air, or space, it's still space-time.
Yeah. So is a warp field, sorry to interrupt you, is a warp field actually just a bending of the fabric of space-time?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
And it's done in such a way that the wave in front is contracted and the wave behind is expanding. And so it's like you're riding a surfboard going forward.
Gotcha. Okay.
Except it's a 4-dimensional surfboard in a 4-dimensional space.
Not at all confusing.
No, not at all.
No. All right. Sorry, I interrupted you. Did you have anything to finish your thought?
No.
Okay. Let's get to this then. Excalibur wants to know, has Bob thought about ways to study orbs? The ability for some to meditate and request their appearance might make them the most easily studied aspect of the phenomena. That's an interesting question.
It's a very interesting question. So I'm involved in SkyHub, and I intend to take the cameras, sensors, etc., out to Sedona, Arizona, sit and spend time with Melinda Leslie while she calls these things in, and I can see what data I can get, as well as gather data on the ones that Chris Bledsoe has around him at all times.
Oh, that'll be fascinating to find out what comes of that. All right. Keep me up to date. Jennifer says, are they trying to recreate UAP technology at the LHCs?
Not that I'm aware of, and almost every scientific organization and funding entity that's sending money to the Large Hadron Collider publishes what they fund, and I know of no case where UAP research is being funded.
Well, I think we would have to understand the fundamental physics that they're using in order to even try something, correct?
Yeah.
So Chrono said, so what about a space-time warp detector?
So that would be a smaller scale equivalent of what the Laser Interferometer Gravity Observatory, LIGO, did when it observed black holes and neutron stars collapsing, and for the first time proved the existence of gravitational waves. Yeah. So we would look for gravitational waves, but we need a detector that would work with much lower frequencies than the frequencies of the gravitational waves caused by black holes, because we don't want to need a black hole to detect a gravitational wave.
Right. So let me guess, there's an issue with that.
Huge issue. So we need to build sensors that do the same things that LIGO does, but is able to detect the gravitational waves being emitted at a much lower frequency. So it's like we need to tune the radio to a different channel.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Can Science Bob talk about some of the experiences he had at the Bledsoe property?
Sure. So I went and visited Chris after telling him I was a scientist at Virginia Tech, and he went off and talked to Simivan and others, and they said, hey, yeah, you should let Bob in because this should be interesting, because they knew who I was. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I went. We talked for 3 days while it rained, and when it cleared up, we went outside and observed. We saw orbs, flash bulbs in the skies, purple auras. I had a hitchhiker follow me home, had multiple poltergeist apport activities in my home.
Wow.
And like many others who've been around Chris, my family had a miraculous healing.
Wow. That's great. That's incredible. Just a tangent here. When I first got into this field, because before my experience, I was no interest, honestly. I thought, that they existed, but I wasn't totally into UFOs. And I met Chris Bledsoe, and I had no idea who he was. So I had the opportunity to sit there and talk to him as much as I wanted to, and had no idea who he was. Terrible. I kick myself every day for that now. All right. And I don't know if there's more that you wanted to talk about with those experiences.
Okay. No, that's enough.
So I have an issue with this. Glenn is saying gravity does not have a frequency, but I'm thinking if there are gravity waves, that would imply there is a frequency, correct?
That's correct. Because the difference, the amount of time between a peak of a gravity wave and the trough of a gravity wave back to the next peak tells you the frequency, because the frequency is the peak, trough, peak, the time it takes for that to go past you. That is the frequency.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yep. Paul just said the same thing here too. Let's see, what's Jennifer saying? Why would they say we are trying to recreate UAP technology with the LHCs, though? Are they saying that?
I don't know anyone who is saying that, and I don't believe it's true.
Because you said, who would fund it under that pretense to the public? They are literally attempting to harness the fabric of existence. I think that would be incredible if we could figure that out.
They are literally attempting to understand the fabric of existence by running experiments, but none of those experiments, to my knowledge, have anything to do with actually trying to figure out how a UAP works. So if we understand all of how things work in the universe, then we'll be able to do the UAPs.
Right. Okay. Kronos says, don't they have theoretical gravitational wave detectors? I've seen the 3 laser anchored buoys that are sensitive enough.
We have gravitational wave detectors on the planet Earth right now. One is in Louisiana, one is in Hanford, Washington, and one is in Italy. And these gravitational wave detectors found the existence of merging black holes. 2 black holes were orbiting around each other and merged into one. They found merging neutron stars that were orbiting around each other and merged into one. And that was really cool because since it was a neutron stars, their light was not cut off by them becoming a black hole. So we saw an explosion of light when these neutron stars collapsed into each other as it kind of exploded and shoved all sorts of stuff out. When they did this, the spectrum of the light that came from these merging neutron stars showed that heavy elements were being formed by these collapsing into one neutron stars. Gold, lead, big heavy elements are formed by neutron stars colliding into each other.
So what does that tell us?
That we didn't know how these elements were made. We couldn't easily predict them from our understanding of nuclear fusion, and we needed a way, and now we know because we observed it in practice. LIGO has observed neutron stars that we then turned telescopes and measured their light, and from the light we got, we could see features in their spectrum that said these elements were being formed. It was amazing. It's awesome.
We just need 2 neutron stars and we smash them together and we make more gold.
We figure out all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. That's crazy. Ugh. Okay, so let's see. Glenn is saying, well, if gravity has a frequency, the frequency is too low to detect.
This is true. Correct. That is correct. We need to modify our sensors to detect gravity waves operating at lower frequencies. As soon as we do, we're going to see a universe full of things that are causing gravitational waves.
Yeah. That would be fascinating. Because I am imagining with every movement, we're creating gravitational waves, would we not?
We are, except gravity's so weak, we can't detect those waves.
Interesting. William, thanks. I love my shirt too. By the way, did anyone see the solar X flare that hit the Earth Saturday morning? I didn't.
So I have a telescope with a solar filter, and I could see the flare. That's number one. Number two, I'm an amateur radio operator, and I have radio gear, and I watched the ionosphere stop working when it hit the Earth.
Wow. Let's see. What is Astro saying? We need to know what these objects are, which fly in our sky, who have already mastered what these waves are.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Aw. Thanks so much. Great show so far. It's crazy. I can't believe we've already been talking for 2 hours. That's insane.
Yep.
And Chris says you have a gravity wave detector in your basement, which is fascinating. I would not doubt it.
I have only one problem.
What's that?
I don't have a basement.
Oh.
I have a building out back, which is my shop and lab, etc.
There you go.
But but I don't have a basement.
Okay, but you didn't deny having one. Let's see. Okay. Does Bob have any theories about why UAPs are so interested in nuclear stuff?
Okay, so there are lots of experiencers I know that have interacted with so-called with entities that are from these phenomena, and all of them, to a large extent that I know about, are regularly involved the issuance of warnings to us about the damage we're doing to the one planet we can live on. And I believe that when we set off the first atomic bomb or the first hydrogen bomb, we probably brought down things that were around our planet and probably killed or damaged some UAPs. And they want to know, are we behaving?
Right.
Okay, so Chris Bledsoe, in his original experience on the Cape Fear River in 2007, January 2007, under regression, reports that he was taken on board a UFO and flown to the future or shown the future, and he was shown an easily known place on the earth, easily known, and shown astronomical events that were happening while he was being shown this place on the earth. And the astronomical events he was shown are easily solved by people who have astronomical knowledge to give us the year and the date. And it's in September of 2026. What he was shown was missiles being fired from nuclear missiles being fired from one country against the other, and the UAPs taking them out.
Wow.
And so I'm just telling you, I don't know any of this is true. I'm telling you what Chris says.
Wow. Well, if that does happen, hopefully it is true. But hopefully that doesn't happen.
So, and we already have these videos or the stories about them hovering over nuclear sites and turning them off or turning them on. We have people who fired nuclear warheads or dummy nuclear warheads from Vandenberg Air Force Base, and they had film of the UFOs zapping them out of the sky.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, I think, honestly, we've got to be like the teenagers of the universe right now. We're just like rebelling and unruly. I wouldn't want to come here if I wasn't an alien. I'd be like, I'm all set. But then again, I also say we're probably like a reality show to them. So yeah. I do love those. But all right. Amanda says, Bob, Whitley Strieber said the visitors have something to do with the afterlife. Could orbs be spirits of the dead?
So you cannot talk to a paranormal investigator who does not see orbs that communicate them with them through electronic voice phenomena. That's number one. Number two, I've seen tons of pictures of orbs around Chris Bledsoe and others that have the faces of people and other entities and pets, etc., which look like they're the spirits of something that's died.
Yeah. Okay. This sounds like an interesting one too. What does Bob think of David Adair's story about an engine he supposedly saw in a bunker that was biomechanically alive and communicated with him? Lies or truth?
I have no idea. I don't know the story.
Oh, okay. So I don't know if it's the same one that I'm thinking of, but I've heard it from like in several different sources that that the UFOs that I don't know if they were just ones that we had like crash retrieval, or because the ones that I think I'm thinking of weren't in pieces, but they were biomechanical. So in other words, there was a biological component to the machines themselves. And so the pilot would somehow interface with these machines to fly.
Okay, so look, this sounds like a very weird question. I don't think it's weird at all.
Yeah.
And not only do I not think it's weird, I think you're seeing that we're about 10 years from doing this already.
Really?
Why is that? Because Elon Musk has started a company called Neuralink, which is going to integrate your brain to a computer. And we are going to evolve through interfaces to machines into cybernetic organisms.
What do you think about that? So this is like the is that the transhuman movement? I can't remember what it's called. What are your thoughts on that? I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not crazy about it.
I would love for my brain to be hooked up to something that would give me instantaneous access to the knowledge of mankind.
That I would agree with. However, I'm thinking of, people that are talking about transferring their consciousness, I guess, before they die.
So I have no idea how to do that, and I do not believe that would be a lossless transfer.
Right.
So I believe, let's say quantum information theory says that transfer cannot be perfect.
Yeah.
And so there would be definite degradation to your consciousness transferring it to another mechanism.
But even if there wasn't, I don't think I would want my consciousness forever in a machine. So I don't know whether you're a spiritual person or not, but if you are, you're hoping your consciousness survives for infinity in the presence of God. So what's the difference? Not necessarily. I think we move on to a different plane of existence. I don't know.
Except it's an infinite,
yes,
near infinite prolongation of your consciousness. So what's the difference?
Because I want to see what's over there.
Maybe you can by being in both places at once, by being a cybernetic organism. Look, I'm not saying that can happen. I'm just telling you, it's too early to condemn it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not condemning it. I'm just saying I don't know that I personally would.
Well, again, and I am very happy if all of this kind of stuff is voluntary.
Oh, I would hope so. My goodness. Yeah. Okay. Angels has a question. How can a metal ship hover above the ground and not make noise?
So, according to Gordon Lohr and others who wrote monographs about all the things you could see around UFOs in the 1960s, says they do emit infrared sound. Our ears just can't hear it. Okay. So again, if they're emitting low frequency gravitational waves,
yes,
and these waves move molecules in our atmosphere, then the molecules moving in our atmosphere is sound.
Right.
So I want to take geophones and other forms of infrared detection and see if I can see infrared sound in the presence of these orbs or UFOs or whatever.
Well, you should do that. Go to someone. Maybe can Dave call on?
That's the reason. That's the reason I want to go spend time with Melinda Leslie.
Yes.
For example, because she is able to have some form of interaction that has these entities show up every night.
That's amazing. Yeah. Then you would know it's a place you would be able to.
She makes a living on taking people to see these things.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. So what got me excited is, and this is kind of not really anything to do with this, but so I love airplanes so much. You have no idea. And I was looking at, what are our advanced airplanes and what could be mistaken for a UFO? And I was looking at the F-35 Lightning, and it's an amazing plane, and has capabilities that I don't know the average person would think of or realize that it is even capable of doing. And is it possible, if you saw something like that, is even the shape of it looks like from underneath, if it was way up high, it could look like a triangular craft. It's a beautiful airplane. I don't know if anybody wants to see it. I have pictures I can show you. I think it's beautiful, but I also have, can I just show you this just because it's really cool? Okay. I got this video, a clip from this video of one of the things this plane is capable of doing. All right, let's see. Okay, here we go. So it has this nozzle that can swivel, right? So it can provide thrust. It also has something in the front too to counterbalance that. But watch this, moving sideways and doing a vertical landing. I mean, Come on.
Okay, so
that's impressive.
Yeah, it is. But that nozzle,
yeah,
the stuff coming out of it is over 1,000 degrees.
No, I agree.
You would see it easily on an infrared sensor.
Oh, for sure. But I'm just saying, we make some pretty cool things too.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. And not only that, I mean, look, 25 years ago, this was Dick Tracy's science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize how much and how fast our world is changing due to our increasing complexity and capability and reduction in cost of electronics and other technologies. And that's going to continue. We're able to make nuclear reactors, which fail safe and cold, which we could replace every coal-fired power plant in the world with a nuclear reactor, which burns up all its ash into something that can be stored for a couple of decades, and then the nuclear waste is gone. Okay, we're just not doing it. Look, we can do this. The thing we really need to do is figure out all of these energy mechanisms, nuclear, etc., and put them into place and stop generating gobs of carbon dioxide. But then we have a problem. The known mechanisms for the Earth to sequester carbon dioxide, given how badly we've been assholes, will take us 1,000 years of natural processes to move that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and back into the Earth's oceans and then the Earth's ground. We can't afford to heat up for 1,000 years. We need to find a way to sequester the carbon dioxide artificially.
Okay. Snakes on a UFO. Yes, that is the replacement for the Harrier, which is also a very cool plane.
Very.
Yes. I got to see the stealth bomber I think it was when it was first shown to the public in an in an air show. And because my dad, so my dad was a colonel at Wright Pat at the time. And the air show came, and this was back in the early 90s. Yeah, because I hadn't quite graduated from high school yet. So it was probably like 92, 93-ish. And I got a sneak peek before everybody got to go in, and I was so close to it. And it was awesome.
Oh, that's great.
It was really awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was another question up here, I thought. Oh, interesting. Okay, what about magnet motors over power machines?
Magnet motors. I mean, every motor I know of is a magnet motor.
Okay.
So I'm not getting it.
Yeah. All right, Anthony, maybe if you can clarify a little bit. I don't know, maybe he's talking about using magnetic fields as a means of propulsion.
Okay, sure. So there is no way I know of to take a magnetic field and induce lift.
Okay.
I know how to take a magnetic field and cause something to rotate while being lifted by another mechanism, but I don't know how to take a magnetic motor and produce lift easily. The amount of power required to take a magnet and operate a force against the magnetic field of the Earth would take a electricity generating mechanism that's so heavy you couldn't lift it off.
Yeah. Okay. All right. William wants to know, what does Bob think about thorium-based nuclear versus our current nuclear? Oh my goodness.
We should build molten salt thorium-based nuclear tomorrow.
Explain the difference to me.
Okay, so it is the way the nuclear material is consumed and the method for moderating the rate of the reaction by generating and capturing neutrons. Nuclear fission works by a particle splitting and emitting neutrons, and then they hit other atoms and cause them to split and so forth and so on.
Right.
And the more neutrons you emit, the more fission you get and the more energy is released. So the thorium-based molten salt nuclear reactors are done in a way that, suppose they fail. If they fail, they automatically cool off and shut down automatically, because they don't need water pumping through at a ridiculous rate, making contaminated water, and when they do, they melt through the bottom of the reactor. That doesn't happen in the modern reactors. We can build a safe reactor tomorrow.
And why don't we? Money?
Political resistance. I think coal-fired and fossil fuel bribing, companies don't want that to happen because they lose money.
Right. Gotcha. All right. Bob says, have we found the gravitron yet? How does this projected particle interact with other dimensions?
We do not know, and no, we have not. It's postulated, but we have not seen them. We don't know how they work. We have a couple of theories, but none of them's proven, and we have no idea. So, if the correct physics is based on string theory in the form of M theory, then we know how that stuff interacts with other dimensions, because the theory only works in 11 dimensions. Okay, so but we don't know the nature of these other dimensions and what they mean. Right. We live in 4-dimensional space-time, but we don't know what the other 7 would do. We don't know what they're there for. So way back when things were super hot and we were having a big bang, the postulation of those who believe in string theory is that these other dimensions were out and about. But as things cooled off and we started getting particles and light and other things, and we had a 4-dimensional space-time, these other ones curled up. So the ant traveling along the pencil in one direction, that's our universe. And the other dimensions are the circumference that we can't get close enough to see, so it looks like a pencil with no depth. Okay, so that's how the other dimensions are understood to be given the string theories, which would tell us. So the graviton falls out automatically from string theory, and all these problems with the infinities and any quantum gravity that came up before we did string theory, they just go away. But we need too much stuff that we have no idea how to find.
Yeah. It's fascinating, though. So they think there are how many 7 dimensions at this point?
So 11.
Oh, 11. Okay.
Yeah, and 4 of them we live in, and 7 we have no idea about.
Gosh. Oh, okay. That's where the 7 comes into play. Okay. Interesting. I think there's probably more than that, but Amanda says, Bob, are poltergeist beings or psychokinetic effects? Oh, I have a theory on that one, but what do you think?
My own personal experiences are that they are some kind of a living entity, but I have no idea what. I went into a haunted place with friends of ours that were ghost hunters, and I had a clear-cut paranormal experience where I heard people walking around and talking out in the hall. I thought it was other people, but they weren't anywhere near us, so it was a paranormal event. And I just have no idea. I mean, literally, I just don't even know where to start.
Well, poltergeist is moving objects as well. So,
but she was talking about poltergeist beings. So poltergeist activity, if you believe lots of people who've done lots of work for decades, paranormal activities, poltergeists activity is caused by human beings that have unknown abilities.
Right. And I think that's what she's asked. I think it's
okay.
Are poltergeist beings or psychokinetic?
I have no idea. I kind of believe some of these experts that psychokinetic effects from inside a person. I kind of like that, but for all I know, they're both, and I just don't have any idea.
I think they're both, and I'll tell you why. So in witchcraft, we do something called, we can create thought forms. They're also called tulpas or egregores. And basically, it's you're willing a being into existence. Now, this being isn't something that we can physically see. It's on a different plane. But basically, I don't know if that would be quantum entanglement, if you're creating a being. I don't know. But so I think that poltergeist, yes, they start out with a human who has abilities, latent abilities that they aren't aware of. And after time, as that psychic energy is being emitted, it does then come together and form a being. And so over time,
I believe in self-organizing systems that can move off away from whatever generated them.
Yeah.
I believe exactly. I believe in those, and that could be a perfectly reasonable explanation should these things be real and exist. And I have personal witness testimony that says something like this can happen.
Oh yeah. Red in the Valley says, has anything been seen in those other dimensions? If so, what was seen? I
don't believe it has been seen. Everything I know about it is a theoretical paper that hasn't been tested.
Gotcha. Bob asks, is the smell of space 3.8 billion? Is it a 3.8 billion year old smell?
No, it's a 13.8 billion year old smell.
Oh my God. I read somewhere. What does it smell like? I read somewhere and I can't remember now, but it was something that surprised me.
I don't have a clue.
Theory. Oh, okay. I don't know. I'll have to look it up and see. Let's see. Oh, what is this? Fun fact, they just proved our brains can operate up to the 11th dimension. So I kind of think we can if we trained ourselves. But that's considered, he said later down, pseudoscience. I don't know. Have they proved that our brains can operate up to the 11th dimension?
I think the human capacity for thought is pretty amazing.
Right.
So, but we are inculcated from birth in a four-dimensional space-time. And we didn't understand it was four-dimensional space-time or manifold until the early part of the 20th century when Einstein and Minkowski gave it to us. So, and I know people that don't have a clue how to visualize four-dimensional space-time. So I just don't know the answer.
Yeah. It's an interesting question, though.
It is interesting.
Let's see. Could electromagnetic waves concentrated create a 3D effect in our real dimension as some ball of lightning?
Electromagnetic waves could trap plasma into something equivalent to ball lightning. So the answer is yes.
Interesting. Okay. We had the particle Higgs boson or the God particle for how many years on paper before we saw it? When we see the gravitron, it will be by its disappearance into the fifth dimension.
We had it for 2.5 decades after Higgs postulated it before we showed it existed in the Large Hadron Collider. And I hope we don't have to wait another 25 years before we know something about gravity.
Yeah. Jennifer, I think this is referring back to the poltergeist. Electromagnetic waves can use momentum to move objects.
Okay, electromagnetic waves can generate a force which will change the momentum of objects, causing them to move.
Okay. See, now my question then would be, no, I don't know what my question would be. Never mind. I was trying to think about it because as I'm thinking, like, okay, waves are creating a frequency. And even though sound is a frequency, you know, when there's something like a deep bass, you feel those waves physically, you feeling that like pounding on you. Would that not have the energy, if highly concentrated, to move an object?
So it depends. Okay. So if the electromagnetic waves induced a reaction inside a piece of matter, it could, in fact, cause it to have physical activity, including motion.
Okay.
So the answer is yes under the right circumstances.
Okay.
The thing I'm saying is, if I tried to build an airplane that used an electromagnetic generator in order to propel it, it would require a power source that's so large I couldn't get it off the ground.
Yeah. Unless the human mind is capable of producing it.
Except where's the energy coming from the human mind? So if the human mind is able to tap some weird energy source from the vacuum of the universe, maybe yes.
Yes. That's it. You know witchcraft already. You got it down.
Okay,
that's
so
exactly what
so the computations are that the reason quantum mechanics and quantum field theory has a lot of trouble is the amount of energy in a small volume of the vacuum is nearly infinite.
Yeah.
But we don't observe it.
Right.
And if it was nearly infinite, that energy would cause that small volume to be a black hole.
If you take all of it, but not if you're taking all of it.
If it just exists in that small volume, it would be a black hole. Since we don't see a black hole in that small volume, this infinite energy in the vacuum there cannot be right. Or we don't understand general relativity.
It's also possible.
I'm sorry, we don't understand. General relativity isn't right.
I think that's the case. Personally.
Except every test we've ever done of general relativity, it's perfect.
But there's also so much that we don't understand that it doesn't.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah,
every test we've done, it works perfectly. Are there tests we haven't done? Of course.
Yeah. But I also think, in different parts of the universe, in different aspects, perhaps physics isn't constant. Perhaps it adjusts to the situation.
And all I'm asking for, which any scientist would say, is give me a demonstration, and then I'll believe it.
Well, if you can build that machine that will take us out into space, then fine. I'll give you a demonstration. Easy. There was a question. That's not the one I saw, but this is an interesting one too. Does electromagnetic waves have an effect on the human body, say if it was done on a large scale? I mean, they say that an EMP can be detrimental to Earth's electrical grid. Okay,
so I promise you don't want to go lay down in a microwave oven and turn it on.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes. Okay, so you know that you can burn yourself with an X-ray.
Yeah.
The radiation treatment for cancer is an electromagnetic wave of a very high frequency targeting the cancer in your body. So the answer is yes.
So that's interesting. How can radiation on one hand cause cancer and on the other hand help cure it?
Okay, so the same damage it does to cause cancer can cause damage to the cancer cells to kill them.
That it then caused.
Okay, so it's just really neat. Look, this is really neat. Let's take a sphere and right in the center of it, let's put cancer.
Yes.
So we want to minimize the damage to everything except that little point. Right. So what we do is take a gun and travel all over that sphere, and the only place that's ever touched more than once is the cancer. As I go around the sphere, I touch every place on that surface only once, but every time I shoot, I hit that cancer. That's how cancer radiation therapy works and why people survive it.
Interesting.
But you're bombarded. Look, everybody needs to go look at Wilson cloud chamber on Google. You can build a cloud chamber in your house tomorrow. And what will you see? You will see streaks of particles in that Wilson cloud chamber all day long. You are being bombarded by radiation by just existing.
I'm going to build a Wilson cloud chamber.
Yes. It's easy.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Let's see. Okay. I think I see a couple of questions. So William was the one that was talking about how they've proven that the brain can, I guess, I don't know, interact with the 11 dimensions. I can't remember exactly how he worded it. Last year, neuroscientists used a classic branch of math in a totally new way to peer into the structure of our brains. What they discovered is that the brain is full of multidimensional geometrical geometry.
That is completely true.
The brain is fascinating.
Well, the brain is extremely complex.
Yeah.
So there are multi-dimensional structures inside the brain, but these structures, even though they're multi-dimensional, live inside of space-time. They're embedded inside of space-time.
So now how does that work?
Well, the multidimensionality is different from what William is thinking it is.
Okay.
So the number of keys I have to touch with my fingers to change a setting inside the brain is 11 fingers touching keys. So that changes something inside the brain because it took 11 fingers. Well, each one of these fingers is manipulating a dimension, but my fingers are still in space-time.
Okay, so for me, I would think, well, each one of those fingers is using a neural pathway, and if you have an 11th finger, now you're creating a new neural pathway. Are we saying the same thing, but with different language?
Yes, and the multiple ways those pathways can be interconnected in a complex way is what gives the higher dimensionality.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, by the way, if anybody's interested in the brain and the amazing things that it can do, check out the book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. It's fascinating. Fascinating. Let's see. I saw the other one that I was looking for. Where did it go? It was about, in string theory, if the physicists were saying that they're, the alternate, was it alternate universes or tiny and curled? I think the question was, how could beings travel from an alternate dimension to us if that's the case?
Well, that's if they're right.
Right.
It may not be tiny and curled. The postulation is these dimensions exist. The actual topology or geometry of those dimensions is unknown. The postulation, the theory that's been put forward is that they're curled up. But if they're not curled up and others have technology that will move them into these other dimensions, they can travel in and out of our space-time through those other dimensions.
Okay. So I don't know. Who was it? Oh, it said that the universe smelled like sulfur and old books. That's awesome. So William's saying, well, we know we cannot create or destroy energy. So wouldn't they just be energy trapped in a dimension or between two locations? I'm not sure what he was referring to.
Well, the quantum mechanics, which is, and quantum field theory, which produces the best predictions of any theory we have, are governed by operations which have a particular mathematical property. Yeah. This mathematical property is called unitary. So the unitary operation is the thing that if I take my quantum mechanical system and transform it from one thing to another by some process with a unitary transformation, the kind of volume or composition or whatever of things remains the same before and after this transformation. And since they stay the same, they have the same set of stuff, that's what conservation of energy arises from. Okay. You cannot destroy what is governed by a unitary transformation. Now, the reason we believe it is because quantum field theory produces the most perfect predictions of any theory we've ever had. So the evidence is it's right. Until we find an error and we know it's no longer right, we believe that.
Okay. All right. I want to get hear your reactions to this. Bob, I think you had an experience of non-local perception of a different time and space.
Possible.
Okay. I think that's all we're going to get. So RB says, a different type of question for Bob. Do you think the pyramids around the world had a scientific purpose at one time?
I'm kind of a weirdo on the pyramids. I've been to the pyramids in Egypt, and the two big ones at the pyramids of Giza, they are absolutely identical. They're laid out identically, side by side, to a perfection that I have no idea how they could have achieved 10,000 years before Christ. So I don't believe they were built by humans, because we didn't have the technology to lay out those pyramids as perfectly identical, perfectly laid out, by whatever mechanism, to a way that we have a hard time measuring now. It's just unreal. I just don't believe they were built by humans, but whatever.
Do you think that they were burial chambers like they say they were?
That I'm sure of, because we've opened up pyramids and found the bodies of pharaohs, his court and family, and dogs and pets and whatever possessions. Yeah, so I believe they were burial chambers. Now, we know that high-powered government-connected entities have gone and searched inside of pyramids for hidden chambers for whatever reason. Yeah. And so I postulate, if the secret machine story told by Tom DeLonge in his books is true, we have found gifted craft in the earth that have been there for a long time. And then one would, having seen it once, if you believe pyramids were built by aliens, maybe they hid a UFO inside it as a gift, and they went and looked. So who knows?
Yeah. So I don't think, especially the Great Pyramid, I do not think that was a burial chamber. And I will tell you why. Because other burial chambers in Egypt, every other burial chamber is decorated. It has hieroglyphics. It has magical incantations to help them cross over to the other side. That has nothing on it. And they've never found a body. They've never found anything to indicate that it was, in fact, a burial chamber. But I have heard that in some of the ancient writings about the pyramids, that they reported that there was water running in it or under it. And so I think some people postulate that perhaps that was, it was something, it was like created a form of energy. I'm not sure what type of energy, maybe.
Okay, so again, having been there,
yes,
I see no way that statement about the water could be true. It's the middle of a dry desert, nowhere near a body of water. I don't know the source of the water that would be flowing. Maybe it's underground, and you don't know it, but I saw no evidence of it.
The Nile River actually was closer to the pyramids than it is now at one point in time. It was much closer, and I think it has just shifted.
Rivers do that.
Yeah. So it could be something from the Nile. It could be, but yes, the theory that I heard is that it was underground. Which then, if that's the case, could a pyramid be used to harness that energy?
I just don't know the answer, because I don't understand in the physical mechanism which would do that. I mean, I just don't know enough. I'm pleading ignorance.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Hold on. I scrolled all the way up, so I've missed a bunch, I'm sure. There's a YouTube video on it. There is flowing water. Okay. Let's see. I thought to this very day there has never been a body pulled from them. They were buried in crypts to the side in them versus in the. I think in some pyramids they have found bodies, but in the Great Pyramid they have not. I do know that. Are the wall paintings of batteries and wiring inside the pyramids real? Have you seen them? I know what you're talking about. Have you seen this?
I've been all through the big one, and I haven't seen anything like this.
Let's see if I can. I know what he's talking about. There is there's a hieroglyph that looks like. Let me see if I can find it. It looks like a light bulb, and it looks like the light bulb was being powered by something. Let's see. Glyphs. But okay, while I'm looking for this, what are your thoughts on some of the hieroglyphs that have been like questionable? There were ones. This wasn't at the Great Pyramids; it was at the Temple of Seti, but it looked like, I'm sure you've seen them. The one that looks like a helicopter, and there was another one that looks like what was that thing in Star Wars on Tatooine that he just slid all over the levitated. Yeah, it looked like that.
That's cool, but I don't know enough about it to comment.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Oh, well, there's several of them. I think this is the one I was thinking of. Is this it? Okay, let's just try this one. And okay, so let me do this. I think I can share the screen. And then I'll show you. Okay. So, just pull it up for a second. No, not you. Where's the rest of you? Okay. Hold on a sec. I'll just do this. Right there. You see that?
Yeah.
There's that. And then, where was the other one I just saw? So, a lot of people have said that that looks like a light bulb.
It does look like a light bulb.
Right.
With a curly thing, the filament and the electrical cord coming in the bottom.
Yeah, it does, which is interesting. Let me see if I can find the also.
Except that could be a lotus flower with a snake inside.
Could be. Yeah, but then what is this like weird thing? It's interesting because it's like it almost looks like near the top of the what we would call the snake or the filament, like hands, but then the body is strangely shaped. So I'm not quite sure what that is.
Me either.
Oh, here it is right here. So this is the one from the Temple of Seti that I was talking about. So this is the one that looks like a helicopter. This is the one that looks like that thing.
And a spaceship right below it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
Yeah.
That looks like a motorboat, a helicopter, and a spaceship.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's insane. I know some people have said that it's like over the years they added on hieroglyphs on top of it. And so what you're seeing is something that was below it and it's creating the shapes that look like this. But I mean, come on, that looks like a spaceship and a helicopter.
Well, I mean, if the text of this picture is correct, by some mechanism that determined these hieroglyphs are 3,000 years old.
Right.
Yeah. Weird.
Right. It is. Yeah. They're interesting. I love it. All right. Let's do. Okay. Now how do I stop sharing this? Oh, there we go. Yay. I figured it out. All right. Okay. So let's see if anybody else. I mean, at this point we are, what's my Twitter handle? It's Witchy Lenny. Witchy with a Y, Lenny with an I-E. Good grief, you sound like Dr. Hawass. Well, come on now. Okay, interesting. The dimensions of the brains you were talking about, are they simply layers of the brain, or do the dimensions refer to the dimensions in the string theory?
They do not. So the dimensions refer to the complexity of the interconnectivity of the neurons.
Okay.
So if I walk along the neurons and I go by all the connections between the neurons, I have to have 11 numbers to tell me where to go. And that's the 11 dimensions.
Okay. So why are they calling them dimensions instead of neural pathways?
Because they want a mathematical model, and the mathematical model is an 11-dimensional entity.
Okay. I am not getting that one, but I will take your word for it. Cobra gunship. All right. Well, it is almost 3 o'clock, which is crazy.
I think 4 hours is enough. What do you think?
I know, right? I know. Oh, one last picture. So this is one of those things that I was saying I think could easily be mistaken for a UFO. Hold on, it's back over here again. Is the vapor cone. I don't know if people have seen this.
Yeah, that's a great photo. I love it.
Oh, it's so awesome, isn't it? Oh, I love it. I mean, so if you see that moving through the sky, you could easily think that was a UFO.
Anytime things break through the sound barrier, and
you guys able to see that?
Yeah, you see that stuff. Okay. Look, follow a SpaceX rocket launch, and you'll see that right before it goes supersonic, you'll see this vapor stream form around it as the cavitation stirs things up, and then it goes faster and faster, and the atmosphere decreases, and that disappears. Mm-hmm. And that's what they call max Q. Happens around then.
It's just cool.
It's way cool.
It is. I was watching videos of them. Like, this was my whole afternoon, was looking at airplanes. Well, awesome. Okie dokie. Well, Bob, you have just been a pleasure, as I knew you would be. Thank you so much.
That was fun. We had a good conversation. I enjoyed it.
We did. Hopefully I didn't look too stupid. But you know what? I will ask questions whenever I don't understand something. So.
But that's it. So yeah, the to the right kind of person, the kind you want to be around, mm-hmm. The only dumb question is the one you fail to answer and should have failed to ask and should have asked. That's a dumb question. One you didn't ask.
That is true.
Ask questions where you're trying to fill a hole in your knowledge are not dumb questions.
Yeah.
Everybody learns.
Mm-hmm. Well, I find it all fascinating. So it was wonderful. Thank you again, Bob.
My pleasure, Lynn. Always.
All right. Let me take us out of here. We've got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Women Rule the World. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. So come on, my little demons, and dance it up for the guitar god himself. A special thanks to everyone listening in at home, in your cars, with your coven, or wherever you may be. Thanks to everyone participating in our chat rooms on YouTube, Twitch, and on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thanks for sharing your evening with us. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need you to send us off into the night. And even though the broomstick may have landed for the night, remember there's always a seat for you on the next flight. Good night, and go make some mischief, my friends.
We launch 1,000 ships into the rocks, and from the cliffs they watch us sink down in our thorny crowns. Beggars dressed as emperors, offering you 7 wonders, promising the deepest thunder. We'll tell you you're the perfect girl. We'll crawl for miles through the sand to win your hand and be your man. I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you. With you. And I'll still trip over my feet. And my heart still skips a beat. I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall. Yeah, the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. Oh, the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a great night. Thank you again, Bob.
My pleasure.